welcome to Module 3. In this module, we will design this beautiful website for an architecture studio. And you will also learn all the functionalities and technicalities and everything that you have to know in order to design a beautiful and also functional website, because we will focus a lot on functionality and all the details that are important. So after completing this module, you will be able to start building your portfolio and then applying for jobs or, getting clients as a freelancer. So pay a lot of attention to what I have to say. Building and recording this course is a lot of work. So thank you very much for being here. Let's go. Here you can see all the lessons we'll go through in this module. Before we start, I have some advice for you. It's never too early to start working on real projects if you get the chance. But always make sure to keep practicing. This way, when you get the chance to work on a real project, you will be more confident. Also, if you haven't joined our private community yet, I invite you to do so. I'm always there replying to questions and engaging with fellow web designers. So go to webdesignerscollective.com and apply to join. It takes less than 1 minute and the value shared there is priceless. I'll see you there. It's totally free to join. All right, so in this lesson, we will explore how to understand the client's brief, where to find inspiration, and how to organize your Figma file. Understanding the brief is crucial for aligning your work with the client's vision. By the end of this lesson, you will be equipped with the skills to transform a brief into a clear, actionable plan that ensures your web design projects are both creative and well organized. So let's get started. Let's start by learning how to understand the client's brief, because this is essential for the success of any web design project. We will do a detailed analysis of the brief to ensure clarity and alignment with the client's vision. So the first thing is the project description or overview, this right here. The project overview indicates that the client is an architecture studio specializing in minimal and utilitarian design. They need a new website that reflects their design philosophy, which is clean, functional, and elegant. The website should showcase their portfolio, describe their services, and make it easy for potential clients to contact them. So we already know that they prefer simplicity and functionality over fancy stuff, and they have a clear goal, which is to make it easy for potential clients to reach out to them. Here, they are pointing out who their ideal prospects are. And in the next lesson, we will go more in detail by creating persona profiles to be super specific about who we are designing for. Because we are not designing for the client, right? In reality, we are designing for the client's potential clients and their existing client base as well. Here we have the project goals, and the project goals include several key objectives. First, the website should showcase the portfolio by creating a section for displaying images and descriptions of their projects. Second, it should detail the services offered by including a page that outlines the architectural services. Third, the website should include the studio through an About Us page with background information on the studio, design philosophy, and team members. Fourth, it should facilitate contact by designing a contact page with a form, location map, and contact details such as phone number, email, and address. Fifth, the website must ensure usability by being easy to navigate and providing a seamless user experience. Sixth, it should be optimized for all devices, ensuring that the website functions well on desktop, tablet, and mobile devices. Lastly, the website should improve visibility by incorporating basic SEO to help potential clients find it more easily through search engines. Now let's talk about the design preferences. The design preferences include a neutral color palette featuring white, gray, and black to emphasize simplicity and elegance. They would also love to see some shades of blue. The typography should use clean, modern fonts that are easy to read and contribute to a minimalistic aesthetic. They didn't specify if they prefer sans serif or serif fonts, so we will ask them later. The layout should be grid-based for a structured and orderly appearance. The imagery should use high-resolution images of projects with minimal editing to focus on architectural details. And finally, interactivity. In terms of interactivity, they want something very simple and minimal because they don't want to overwhelm the user with a lot of fancy stuff, right? So we should keep it minimal. And the budget, they have a $14,000 budget, and okay, it has to include the initial consultations, the wireframes, mockups, design revisions, and the delivery of final design files. All right. And you want to be very specific with the design revisions, right? Because you don't want to be, caught up in a loop of infinite revisions. But you will learn about that in module number 5. In that module, I will teach you how to navigate a contract so you can always get deals that are beneficial to both you and your clients. By following these guidelines, the website will effectively communicate the studio's expertise and attract clients who appreciate their design principles. Understanding these detailed aspects of the brief will help in creating a website that meets the client's needs and exceeds their expectations. Let's dive into the project with this clear roadmap in mind. Now let's create the persona profiles. And first, I will explain what persona profiles are and why they are very important. Creating persona profiles is a crucial step in web design. It involves understanding who your client's audience is. Personas are fictional characters that represent the different user types who might use a website. These profiles help you tailor the design and content to meet the needs of the target audience. Let's define the key characteristics. Think about their age, gender, occupation, interest, and goals. For example, if you are designing a website for an architecture studio, one person might be a 45-year-old business owner looking to develop a new office building, for example. Another persona might be a young couple interested in building a modern minimalistic home. To create accurate personas, research is essential. You can gather information through surveys, interviews, or analyzing data from existing users. This helps you understand their behaviors, preferences, and challenges. For instance, if most users access the site on mobile devices, the design should be mobile friendly and you should put a lot of focus into that. Once you have gathered enough information, it's time to develop detailed profiles for each persona. It's also cool to give them realistic names and include a photo to make them more relatable. It should also include a short biography that includes their background, needs, and how they might use the website. This makes it easier to visualize the user and design a website that meets their needs. And here is an example of some persona profiles we'll use to design the Architecture Studio's website. Make sure to use these personas throughout the design process. Refer to them when making decisions about layout, content, and functionality. Ask yourself how each persona will interact with the website. This helps you ensure that the design is user-centered and caters to the actual needs of the client's audience. Remember, personas can evolve over time. As you gather more data and insights, update your personas to reflect any changes. This continuous improvement helps keep the website relevant and effective for its users. So when we start designing our website, we will use these persona profiles as a reference point. Now let's create the mood board using Figma. So what is a mood board? A mood board is a visual tool that helps you convey the style, tone, and overall feeling of a project. It's a collection of images, colors, typography, and all the design elements that represent the desired aesthetic of a website. Mood boards are used in the early stages of a design project to establish a cohesive vision and ensure everyone involved is on the same page. And why should we create a mood board? Creating a mood board is essential for several reasons. First, it helps clarify your ideas and give you a clearer direction for your design. By compiling various visual elements, you can see how they work together and make adjustments before starting the actual design. Second, it serves as a communication tool between you and your client. It allows you to represent your vision in a tangible way and get feedback early in the process. Lastly, it helps maintain consistency throughout the project. By referring back to the mood board, you can ensure that all design elements align with the established aesthetic. And when is the best time to create a mood board? The best time to create a mood board is at the beginning of the design process, after you have understood the client's brief and created the persona profiles. This ensures that the mood board reflects the needs and preferences of the target audience while aligning with the client's vision. So creating the mood board early on helps set the tone for the entire project. So here are the steps to create a mood board. Number 1, gather inspiration. Start by collecting images, color palettes, typography examples, and other visual elements that resonate with the desired style. You can also use design websites, magazines, and even photos you take yourself as source of inspiration. This step is crucial as it helps you understand the visual direction you want to take and provides a foundation for your mood board. Additionally, it's always good to ask the client to send you the links to 3 to 10 websites they like, and then request that they explain why they like these sites, pointing out what they like the most and what they like the least. This input can provide valuable insights and ensure that your mood board aligns with their vision. Number 2, organize your elements. Once you have gathered your visual elements, the next step is to organize them in a way that makes sense to you. You can create digital mood boards using tools like Canva, or make a physical one by cutting and pasting elements onto a board. I like to create all my mood boards in Figma. Organizing your elements helps you see how different visuals work together and ensures a cohesive look. Number 3, define the mood. Ensure that your mood board clearly conveys the overall mood and style of the project. It should evoke the right emotions and give a sense of what the final design will look like. This step is about refining your choices and making sure that the mood board aligns with the desired aesthetic of the project. And lastly, use it as a reference. Once your mood board is finalized, use it as a reference throughout the design process. It will help you stay consistent and ensure that all design elements work harmoniously together. By regularly referring back to your mood board, you can maintain the established aesthetic and ensure that your final design aligns with the initial vision. Let's create the mood board for this Architecture Studios website. And the first thing we have to do is to copy and paste the brief here so we can see it at all times. To access the brief, go to the resource page by clicking on the link in the description. And then once you are in the resource page, you will see a section titled Designing Your First Website. In that section, you will see the link that takes you to the Google document that contains the brief. And then the next thing is to create a frame. And to do it, you can just come here and click frame or press F on your keyboard. And then we can create the frame. It can be any size. Something like this is fine. The next step is to rename the frame. We can add here mood board. All right, so now we can start adding some images, but first let's go to the brief. Let's go here where it says design preferences and let's take a look again. Okay, they prefer a neutral color palette including white, gray, and black to emphasize simplicity and elegance. Okay, you could also add some shades of blue or other cold colors. All right. Typography. They like clean, modern fonts that are easy to read and contribute to a minimalistic aesthetic. All right. The layout, a grid-based layout. Okay. And imagery, high-resolution images. Okay, we have that. And then interactivity. All right, that's for prototyping. So let's start. Let's add some images, and we will add the images through the Unsplash plugin. So let's right-click. And then go to plugins and Unsplash. And here you can search any images that you think would fit the design aesthetic. Like for example, and you go to all licenses and click free because we want to see free images only. And then you can just like search and, add different images. So here is the mood board I created, and I didn't only use Unsplash, right? I also use other sources of inspiration, and I will show them to you. But first, I will walk you through the mood board, and so you can better understand my thought process. As you can see, I incorporated many architectural structures as reference. Different tones of color have been used to represent the client's aesthetic request. And as you can see here, Greek architecture, both ancient and modern, is featured because it embodies the concept of simplicity very well. The clean lines and minimalist design of Greek buildings align perfectly with the client's vision. I also ensure that the mood board showcases different shades of blue, which we can use extensively throughout the project. As you can see here, you see. And additionally, I included some images with subtle orange tones in various elements. Although orange was not specified in the brief, I believe that combining white, black, and blue, and then add a touch of orange creates a beautiful contrast. The orange will be used sparingly, so just a little bit, focusing primarily on the neutral tones and shades of blue. This approach allows us to maintain a clean, elegant aesthetic while adding a subtle, vibrant touch to enhance the overall visual appeal. I've also added some images featuring text so I can use them as inspiration when selecting the typography for the website. I might not use these exact fonts, but I'll probably choose one that is similar. So here are some of the sources I use for inspiration. Number one, search system. Search system is an ever-growing collection of references and tools for designers. This resource is designed to inspire and support designers by providing a diverse pool of visual materials, including images, graphics, typography, and more. The platform includes curated collections from various categories such as digital, drawings, exhibitions, furniture, graphics, photography, typography, and websites, making it a very valuable source for creative inspiration and design elements. Additionally, it features profiles of notable designers and studios, offering insights into their work and creative processes. Everything is very well organized, and I really appreciate that. Number two is Landbook. Landbook is an ever-growing collection of handpicked websites, and it also offers a lot of different visual materials to inspire and support creative projects. The platform features a variety of website types and graphic styles, so check it out. Number three is Made in Webflow. Made in Webflow is a curated showcase of websites built using Webflow. The portfolio includes a diverse range of popular projects featuring everything from sleek portfolios and interactive websites to e-commerce solutions. These websites are some of the sources I use for inspiration, but I also use books. I have added a more extensive list of sources on the inspiration page. Go to the inspiration page by clicking the link in the description right below where it says resources. Before we dive into designing wireframes, it's crucial to set up our file efficiently. Since we are using the free version of Figma, we'll have some limitations, such as the number of pages we can create. But no worries, we'll work within these constraints effectively. Before creating the pages, create a new design file. If you can't create a new design file due to the free plan limitations, go to the home dashboard and then remove these two design files. These are default pages that come with Figma and we don't need them for our project. So right click and then click on delete. The first step is to create the pages we'll use throughout the project, and here is how to structure them. Page number one will be dedicated to organizing our wireframes and components, and also some other stuff like the persona profiles, the project brief, and the mood board. Keeping these elements together helps us manage the limitations of Figma's free plan while maintaining a clean and efficient workspace. As you begin working on projects and collaborating with clients, it's advisable to upgrade to a premium Figma plan. This will remove the limitations of the free plan and allow for more advanced organization of your design file. I will also be creating in-depth and advanced organization guides, which I will share in our private community. And then create another page for the main design. This will help you make sure that your final designs are easy to find and not mixed with other elements. The third page will be the bin, and this is where you will put elements you decide not to use but want to keep just in case. It's like a storage space for your design ideas and drafts. Another thing I like to do is to create local styles, and we will create local styles in lesson 3.8 when we create our style guide. And this helps keep colors consistent throughout the entire design. We will also use a simple but clear naming convention to make sure that every frame and component is easy to find, especially when working with a team. For example, instead of vague names, we will use specific ones like header-logo for the logo in the header, or contact form-submit button for the submit button in the contact form. Use the layers panel and sections to manage different elements within a page effectively. When you are working with a team, you can use the comments for feedback and the version history to track changes. To add a comment in Figma, select the comment tool from the toolbar right here, or press C on your keyboard. Click on the area of the design where you want to leave a comment and type your feedback or note. Comments are visible to all collaborators and team members can reply to them, making it very easy to have discussions directly within the design file. You can easily hide or show comments as needed. Here is how. Right-click anywhere in the canvas and select Show or Hide Comments. You can also use the keyboard shortcut Shift+C to quickly toggle comments on and off. This is a convenient way to manage comment visibility while working on your design. By following this structure, you will keep your Figma file organized and efficient, even with the limits of the free plan. To access the version history, go here, and then File, and then Show Version History. And it appears here. Then you can click on any version you want to recover. Before we proceed, let's change the name of the file to Architecture Studio. In this lesson, you've learned how to understand the project brief, what persona profiles are, how to create a mood board and where to find inspiration, and how to organize your Figma file. Now it's finally time to start designing the wireframe for the Architecture Studio's website. But first, I want to explain what a wireframe is so you can clearly understand the concept. A wireframe is a simple visual guide that shows the layout of a web page. It outlines where different elements like headers, images, buttons, and text will go. Wireframes are like blueprints for the website, helping you plan the structure before adding details like colors and images. This way, we can focus on the layout and functionality of the website without getting distracted by design elements. Understanding wireframes is important because they are the first step in creating a well-organized and user-friendly website. You don't have to use wireframes on every project and every time you do a website, right? Sometimes I design websites without creating wireframes, especially when it's a simple landing page or a quick project. However, when you are working with a team, especially with big companies, they will probably require you to work on wireframes. Usually, large companies also have someone especially, responsible for designing the wireframe UX, while someone else is in charge of designing the UI. That's why it's important for you to know how to design them. Wireframes help ensure that everyone is on the same page and understands the structure and functionality of the website before adding detailed design elements. So without further ado, let's start designing the wireframes for the Architecture Studio's website. We will design a low-fi wireframe. Low-fi stands for low fidelity, meaning we will not, overcomplicate anything. We will create a rough and basic wireframe to get a better idea of where things will be placed in the final design. All right, so let's start by creating a desktop size frame by pressing F on our keyboard. Then here on the properties panel, we'll click on desktop. Here we have it. Now let's resize the height of the frame. Something like this for now. We will resize it later as we add the content. Now let's change the name of the frame to desktop-homepage. And now it's time to start adding some elements inside of the frame. Since this is a lo-fi wireframe, we will not add any text, so we will do everything with shapes. All right, so let's create the header. To do so, we'll create a rectangle. So let's click on the rectangle tool right here. And then let's go back to the frame and let's create something like this. You don't have to use the exact sizes of the shapes I'm creating. Approximate sizes are fine since we will adjust them during the final design phase. All right, now let's select the shape we just created and then press and hold Alt and drag the rectangle to create a copy. We can place the copy here for now. Next, let's resize the shape to make it smaller as this shape will represent the logo. Now let's align the logo with the, with the menu by dragging it right here. Approximately here is fine. Now we will create the heading text, which will be an introduction and, main value proposition of the Architecture Studio. The main value proposition is a clear statement that explains how a product or a service solves a problem or improves a situation for their clients. It highlights the key benefits and why someone should choose your client's offering over others. So, in simple terms, it's what makes a product or a service attractive and valuable to a target audience. Usually, a copywriter is in charge of writing a compelling main value proposition, but I always say that web designers should learn copywriting. It's a very nice complementary skill to have because even though as you advance in your career, you will less likely be in charge of writing the copy, it's always good to be able to give some, valuable suggestions and feedback. It makes you a more valuable designer. A lot of great designers are also very good at copywriting. So, and I want you to be above average. That's why I'm telling you all this. So to create the representation of the text in the wireframe, we will also use shapes. We could use dummy text like lorem ipsum, but we are not going to do that. We will keep it simple. Let's create a rectangle and then stretch it like this. Let's make it a little thinner. All right, like this is fine. And then we will center it. Now let's do the same as we did to create the logo. So let's select the rectangle and then press and hold Alt and drag to make a copy. All right, so let's do it again and again. Now we have 4 lines of quote unquote text. This will be our heading text in the homepage, which will contain the main value proposition. Now we'll create a heading title, and this will be a large title that says something like work or projects, because we will display the latest or most important projects of the architecture studio below this title. Since it's just one word, we can actually write it. As a placeholder, we will write the title and set it to 200 pixels for now, then center it. Something like this is fine. Now we'll create the homepage work or project sections. Let's say that they have 6 projects they want to show in the homepage. To showcase these projects, we will create 6 project cards in rows of 2. Each card will be formed by one image and then a text below the image. The image will be a preview of the project. The text will be the project's name and the location. Let's start creating one card with a rectangle like this. We'll multiply it later by copying and pasting or pressing and holding Alt and dragging it. Now let's create a small rectangle and stretch it to simulate what would be the project's name and the location. Now let's align these to the left, right here, and then let's select both and press Ctrl G or Command G if you are on a Mac to create a group. Grouping these together will make it easier for us to move it around if we need to. We can also group this and this. So let's align this to the left so it's perfectly aligned with the logo. And then let's select it and then press Alt and then drag while maintaining, Alt pressed to create a copy. Let's move this one a little closer to the other and then let's select both, maintain Shift, and then resize them. Something like this. We don't have to worry too much about the margins right now. We will make sure that everything is perfectly aligned later when we do the final design. All right, so let's select the frame and then resize it so we can add, the other cards. So something like this. We will fix it later. We will resize it later. So it's not too, like the height is not too much. And now we will select these both. And then we will press Ctrl or Command G to create another group. And then we will select this group. And then we will press, Alt. And then we will make a copy by dragging. And then we will make another copy. And now we have the 6 projects right here. And yes, now this is starting to look like an organized website. Let's create a CTA. A CTA, or call to action, is an element that encourages users to take a specific action. It can be a button or a link or any other interactive element designed to prompt immediate response or engagement from the user. Our CTA will be a text that will help users discover more projects. For now, as a placeholder, we will name it CTA. And we will place it here, centered below the homepage project section. And let's resize the CTA to 100 pixels. The next section we will add is the footer section, and we will do so by creating another rectangle, like this. Looking at the wireframe, I think there is something missing, which is giving emphasis to a project. The client requested 6 projects on the homepage, but we'll make a new version which, that includes 7 projects instead. One of these projects will be highlighted as the most important one and will be placed in a prominent position. Let's make a copy by selecting this frame and drag it while holding Alt. Now let's resize the copied frame and make some space here, and then we can copy one of these cards to resize them to something like this. For this one, don't press and hold Shift because we want to modify the aspect ratio of the rectangle. And do not press and hold Alt and drag, because if we do that, it will remain part of the group with the other 2 cards, and we want it to be independent. So just copy and paste by pressing Ctrl or Command C and then Ctrl or Command V. And then drag the card to move it up, just like I did. And when pasting the card, make sure you click inside of the parent frame, because if not, it still will be part of the group. Now let's resize the project's name a little bit, like this. As designers, it's our responsibility to always provide suggestions and advice to our clients if we have ideas that can improve the design. Therefore, we have created a second option. These iterations don't take too much time to make, so don't shy away from speaking your mind. It's essential to communicate our creative insights to ensure that we deliver the best possible outcome. By emphasizing this key project, we can draw more attention to it and enhance the overall impact of the homepage. Let's reduce the spacing here by selecting and dragging all these elements up. Now we can resize the frame a little bit. And since we created the wireframe only using shapes, it's always good practice to add different color shades to the different sections and items. We can also change the images to a darker shade of gray and the text and the representations of text to black. We can keep these sections, such as the footer, in the current color. To select multiple elements individually in Figma, hold down Shift and click on each element. Since these shapes representing the images are inside a group, select them individually by pressing Ctrl on Windows or Command on Mac plus Shift. There is a better way to select multiple elements to change their color using a Figma plugin called Select Similar. I will show you how to do it right now. First, right-click anywhere on the canvas and go to Plugins. Then click on Manage Plugins and type Select Similar here in the search bar. And then install and run the plugin. Next, select one of the shapes by pressing and holding Ctrl or Command on Mac and Shift, and then clicking on the shape. In the plugin, choose the width and height option, then click on Select Layer Sample. Finally, click on Select Similar to select all the shapes with similar properties. And now you have all the similar shapes selected and you can easily change their colors. Now let's change the color of this individual image as well. So let's select. And then we will do the same with the text. This is going to be in color black. And this as well. And then this we can just select and change. That's it. All right, so we have these two options now. And we are going to change the names. I mean, just add, for example, for this one, option 2, because this is the second option. And then for this one, option 1. All right. Now we are going to create the tablet version and the mobile version. But first, let's drag this one here. And then this one. So we know that this version is the first version that we are not going to work with this version yet, but we'll keep it here for now. So to create the tablet version, let's create a new frame right here. And then we'll select the tablet, the iPad Pro 11. All right, here it is. And then we place it here. And then we stretch this. And we change the name as well. We are going to call it tablet homepage. All right, and this is very simple because there is only a few things that will change. So for now, we'll copy this and then we'll paste it here and then we will resize it. Something like this is fine. For the tablet version, I like to create a clickable menu that expands after clicking. Some people call it hamburger menu, but instead of an icon, I like to write the actual word menu. You might be a little bit confused right now, but I will show you what I'm talking about. So let me zoom here, and then I will make a copy. And then I will delete this. And then I will add some text here. I will resize. And then this will be the menu, right? And then when people click, it will expand and we will see all the menu options. So this is what I mean. All right, so let's delete this. And then let's resize this. Something like this is fine. So this represents the menu icon or link in the wireframe. We will copy and paste the title here, and then we will center it. We'll copy and paste this as well. And then we will resize. Something like this is fine. And when you resize this, remember to not press and hold Shift because we want to modify the aspect ratio. All right. And now we will select all these. And then we will paste it here as well. And then we will do the same. We will resize. And then something more like this, maybe. All right. And we will do the same with this. Okay. Here is fine for now. We will resize this to something like 70 pixels maybe. Yeah. We'll center it as well. And then we'll copy and paste this here. Somewhere here is fine. All right. And then let's resize the frame. And that's it. Now we have the tablet version, and it will have also 2 columns. And as we are going to see now, the mobile version will not have 2 columns. It's going to be all in 1 column. And now I will explain why. So let's move this a little bit up. Let's select everything and then move it. And we'll do the same here. All right, just fixing the footer a little bit. And then let's resize the frame now. Like this and like this. All right, and now we'll create the mobile version. To do so, let's create a frame. And then let's select the iPhone 8. Here we have it. Let's move it here. And then let's resize. All right. And then now we'll copy everything basically. So let's copy and paste here. Something like this. Let's resize this as well. Let's center it. Like this. All right. Let's copy and paste the title as well. Let's center it. And then we'll resize it to 100 pixels. All right. Then we'll copy this image as well. And the project title. Something like this is fine. And we will duplicate all these cards until we have 7. Let's resize this more. All right. All right. Now it's CTA. We'll paste it here. And then the footer. Here is fine. All right. Let's change the name of this frame to mobile homepage. Actually, let's move this version to the bin right now because we are not going to work on it. And this is a version we will show obviously in real life. We would show it to the client, but right now we don't need it, right? Because we know this version is better and we will work on this. So let's select the frame and then press Ctrl or Command X, and then let's go to the bin right here, and then Ctrl V to paste. All right. Now let's create the expanded menus for this version, the tablet and the mobile versions. So to do so, let's delete everything minus this icon, right? Or the link, which is going to be where people will click to open or close the menu. And to do that, we'll make a copy of this frame and then another copy of this frame. And then we will delete everything minus this. All right, and we will do the same thing here. All right. Now we'll create the menu items. On mobile devices, we need more space between menu items than on tablet because mobile screens are smaller. This helps prevent accidental taps. People often use phones with one hand, making it harder to tap small, closely spaced items. You can modify the space between items here on the Properties panel. Also, mobile phones are used while moving, so quick and easy interactions are important. Tablets have larger screens and are used in a more stable way, so they can have less space between items while still being easy to use. We have now completed the design of the structure for our homepage wireframes across the 3 main breakpoints: desktop, tablet, and mobile. Next, we'll design the wireframes for the remaining pages, referring back to the brief to determine which pages to create. Let's check the brief. Here, we can see that we need to create 4 main pages: a portfolio or a projects page, a services page, an about us page, and a contact page. We'll also create a blog page since they want us to focus on SEO as well. After creating these pages, we'll create all the boring pages, the terms and conditions page, the legal note page, and all that jazz. Since you already know the basics on how to structure a wireframe, I created the wireframes of all the pages beforehand, as you can see here. This will help you understand the end goal more clearly. Your task will be to complete the wireframes as an exercise. This way you can see how everything comes together and ask questions if needed. It will make the learning process more efficient and ensure you can confidently create the wireframes on your own. And again, don't worry if your wireframe doesn't look pixel perfect or exactly like mine. As long as it has the same structure and number of elements, it's fine. We'll get everything right in the next design phase. So I've created some sections and placed all the wireframes inside of them for better organization. Sections in Figma are organizational tools that allow you to group and manage related frames or elements within a design project. To create a section, create a frame first, then right-click inside the frame and click on Convert to Section. You can turn any frame into a section. I use different subtle shades of blue to distinguish between the desktop, tablet, and mobile versions of the pages. The use of these shades helps to visually separate the sections slightly, maintaining a more subtle and elegant appearance. Feel free to use any color shades you prefer when designing and presenting your wireframes. I would use a shade of blue or maybe a gray, or maybe a neutral tone or something like that. I've also added comments to explain some elements and sections. You can access the Figma file containing the wireframes by visiting this page, freewebdesigncourse.com/wireframes. Use this Figma file as reference and try to replicate the design. Remember that it doesn't have to be 100% accurate. Just make sure it includes a similar number of elements and that it follows the same structure, since it's the structure we'll use for the final design. If you have any questions about how to complete this or if you get stuck, make a post in the private community and we'll help you out. In this lesson, you've learned what wireframes are and how to design them. In this lesson, we will talk about colors and why they have a significant impact on design. Colors play a vital role in how we perceive and interact with the world around us, and they are a powerful tool in the hands of a skilled designer. So let's start with the color theory. The color theory is a very important aspect of design that involves the study of how colors interact and the visual effects they create when combined. Understanding color theory is essential for web designers as it helps in creating visually appealing and effective designs. This lesson will guide you through the basics of color theory, including the color wheel, color harmonies, and the psychological impact of colors. So the color wheel. The color wheel is a fundamental tool in color theory. It's a circular diagram of colors arranged by chromatic relationship. The primary colors, red, blue, and yellow, are the foundation of the color wheel. Mixing these primary colors creates secondary colors like green, orange, and purple. Further mixing of the primary colors and secondary colors produce tertiary colors. The color wheel helps designers understand the relationship between colors and how they can be combined to create harmonious designs. So what are color harmonies? Color harmonies refer to the pleasing combination of colors based on their position on the color wheel. Common color harmonies include complementary, analogous, and triadic schemes. Complementary colors are opposite each other on the color wheel, such as red and green, and create a vibrant contrast. Analogous colors are close to each other in the color wheel, such as green, blue, and turquoise, providing a harmonious and soothing effect. Triadic colors are evenly spaced around the wheel, such as red, yellow, and blue. So now let's talk about the psychological impact of colors. Colors can evoke emotions and influence perceptions, making their psychological impact an essential consideration in design. For example, red often signifies passion, energy, or urgency, while blue conveys calmness, trust, and professionalism. Yellow can evoke happiness and optimism, but it can also cause eye strain if overused. Understanding the psychological effects of colors helps designers create websites that resonate with their target audience and effectively communicate the desired message. Depending on the culture, the perception and meaning of colors can vary significantly. For instance, while red is associated with good luck and celebration in Chinese culture, it can symbolize danger and warning in Western cultures. Similarly, white signifies purity and peace in many Western cultures, but is often associated with mourning and death in some Asian cultures. Being aware of these cultural differences is crucial for designers working on global or multicultural projects. So, how we should use color in web design? When applying color theory in web design, it's important to consider the overall user experience. Consistent and thoughtful use of color can guide users' attention, enhance readability, and create a cohesive brand identity. For example, using a color scheme that aligns with the brand's logo and overall aesthetic can strengthen brand recognition. Additionally, we should be mindful of accessibility, ensuring that color choices do not hinder the usability of the website for individuals with color blindness or other visual impairments. So, in conclusion, a solid understanding of color theory is essential for creating effective and visually appealing web designs. By mastering the color wheel, exploring various color harmonies, and considering the psychological impact of colors, we can craft websites that not only look good, but also, communicate the desired message to the audience. Remember, the strategic use of colors can make a significant difference in the success of your web design projects. In this part of the lesson, we will learn how to use Figma's color tools to create and apply color schemes in your designs. Figma offers a variety of tools to help you choose and manage colors in your design projects. These tools include the color picker, color styles, and the color palette. The color picker allows you to select colors for any elements in your design. You can pick colors from the color wheel, enter specific color codes, or even sample colors from other parts of your design, even from images like you are seeing right now. Color styles help you keep your colors consistent across your design. Once you create a color style, you can apply it to multiple elements. And if you need to change the color later, you can just update the color style and all linked elements will change automatically, just like this. This is very powerful and saves a lot of time. A color palette is a collection of colors that you use in your design. Figma lets you create and save palettes, making it easy to reuse colors and maintain a cohesive look throughout your project. I've listed some resources, books, and tools to help you better understand the importance of colors and how to use them properly when designing. You can access this list by going to freewebdesigncourse.com/colors. Images play a vital role in web design, enhancing visual appeal and helping to communicate messages more effectively. Here are some tips to ensure that you use images effectively in your designs. Tip number 1, choose high-quality images. Always use high-quality images in your designs. Blurry or pixelated images can make your website look unprofessional. Opt for images that are clear, sharp, and well-composed. High-quality images can significantly enhance the overall look and feel of your design. Tip number 2, ensure relevance. The images you choose should be relevant to your content and purpose. They should support the message you are trying to convey. For example, if you are designing for a website for an architectural studio, use images of buildings, blueprints, and architectural details. Relevant images make your content more engaging and meaningful to your audience. Most of the times, the client is going to send you the images, but oftentimes you will also have to search, through stock photos and maybe even do a little bit of creative directing and collaborating with photographers. So you have to make sure that the images are nice and very relevant to the to the main purpose of the website. And this is very obvious, but I wanted to tell you about this because I think it's very important. Tip number 3, optimize image sizes. Large images can slow down your website, leading to a poor user experience. Optimize your images to reduce their file size without compromising on quality. This can be done using various tools and techniques such as compression, resizing, and using appropriate formats like JPEG or PNG. I will share with you some nice tools to optimize your images at the end of this lesson. Tip number 4, use a consistent style. Maintain a consistent style for all images across the website. These could include the use of similar filters, color schemes, or compositions. Consistency helps create a cohesive and professional look, enhancing the overall visual harmony of the website. Tip number 5, pay attention to the placement. Carefully consider where you place images within your design. Images should complement your layout and not overwhelm the text or other elements. Use images to guide the viewer's eye and support the flow of information. Tip number 6, use images to evoke emotions. Images have the power to evoke emotions and create a connection with the audience. Choose images that elicit the desired emotional response, whether it's excitement, trust, or tranquility. Emotional engagement can make your content more memorable and impactful. In this lesson, you learned what the color theory is and how it impacts design. And you also learned about the psychological effects of colors. Let's move to the next lesson. Typography is a crucial component of design that goes beyond aesthetics. It involves the strategic arrangement of text to ensure clarity, readability, and visual appeal. Understanding typography's importance is essential for creating designs that effectively communicate your message and engage the audience. In this lesson, we will dive into the basics of typography, helping you appreciate its role and learn how to use it to enhance your web designs. So let's talk about typefaces and fonts. A typeface is a family of related fonts, and a font is a specific style and weight within that family. For example, Arial is a typeface, while Arial Bold and Arial Italic are fonts within that typeface. Choosing the right typeface for your design is essential as it affects the overall aesthetic and readability of your text. Now let's explore the differences between serif and sans-serif typefaces. Typefaces are generally categorized into two main groups, serif and sans-serif. Serif typefaces have small decorative lines or extensions at the end of their letters, such as the Times New Roman typeface. They are often considered more traditional and are typically used in print media. Sans-serif typefaces like Arial do not have these lines and are seen as more modern and clean, making them popular for digital screens. Now let's talk about hierarchy and emphasis. Typography helps create a visual hierarchy in your design, guiding users through the content in a structured way. Headings, subheadings, body tags, and captions should all have distinct styles to indicate their level of importance. Using different font sizes, weights, and styles helps establish this hierarchy and ensure that your content is easy to navigate. Now, readability and legibility. Readability refers to how easily the text can be read and understood, while legibility is about how easily individual characters can be distinguished. Factors affecting readability and legibility include font choice, text size, line height, and contrast between text and background. Ensure that your text is large enough to read comfortably and that there is enough space between lines to prevent them from running together. Now let's talk about line length and alignment. The optimal line length for body text is typically between 50 to 75 characters per line. Lines that are too long or too short can make reading difficult. Additionally, text alignment impacts readability and aesthetics. Left-aligned text is generally easiest to read, and while centered or right-aligned text can be used for shorter lines or specific design purposes. Now, color and contrast. The color of your text and its contrast with the background are crucial for readability. High contrast between text and background enhances readability, while low contrast can strain the eye. For example, black text on a white background is highly readable, whereas light gray text on a white background is not. However, it's generally recommended to avoid using pure black for text. Pure black can create too harsh a contrast, making it difficult to read for extended periods. Instead, consider using a very dark gray, such as this one, or even this one. This slight adjustment can reduce eye strain and make the text more comfortable to read. For very large text, you can use lower contrast since the size itself enhances readability. Large text is already more legible, so slightly reducing the contrast can still maintain readability while providing a more pleasant visual experience. But you have to be careful and make sure that the contrast is not too low. Be mindful of color choices to ensure that your text is accessible to all users, including those with visual impairments. This consideration is essential for creating an inclusive and user-friendly design. I've also made a list of tools I use to make sure that the contrast is always optimal. You can access the list by going to freewebdesigncourse.com/contrast. Alright, so now let's talk about choosing typefaces. When selecting typefaces for the web, consider web-safe typefaces and web fonts. I've made a list of beautiful typefaces you can use for your designs. These fonts are free and you can access the list by going to freewebdesigncourse.com/free-fonts. You can also browse some premium fonts I like by going to freewebdesigncourse.com/premium-fonts. Some of these fonts might seem very expensive, but that's relative, because if the budget allows it, your client wants them, and they elevate the design, they are worth the price. And how many typefaces should you use? When designing a website, the number of typefaces you use is crucial for maintaining a clean and cohesive look. Using too many typefaces can create visual clutter and make your design look unprofessional. So here is the general rule. What I recommend is to use one typeface in most cases, employing a maximum of 2 font styles within the typeface. For more complex designs, you can use a maximum of 2 typefaces, each with up to 2 different font styles. This approach helps ensure consistency and harmony throughout your design. And this is very important when using text styles. When using text styles, always skip one text style for better contrast and readability. For example, if you are using light, the other style should be medium and not regular. If you are using regular, the other style should be bold and not medium. This practice helps to create a clear hierarchy and avoids confusion. Sometimes you might consider using the same style or the next style with an added underline for emphasis. However, it's generally better to stick to skipping one style. This technique maintains a clean and professional look while providing the necessary visual distinction within your design. Now let's talk about where to use these typefaces in case you choose to use more than one. For the majority of your design, choose a single primary typeface. This typeface will be used for the bulk of your text, including body copy, headings, and subheadings. Select a typeface that is highly readable and versatile, suitable for various sizes and weights. Within this typeface, you can use different styles such as regular, bold, and sometimes italic to create visual hierarchy and emphasis. If your design requires more variety, you can introduce a secondary typeface. Use this typeface sparingly for emphasis and to create contrast with the primary typeface. The secondary typeface can be used for specific elements like headings, subheadings, or highlights. Ensure that the secondary typeface complements the primary typeface and aligns with the overall design aesthetic, but feel free to break the rules and get creative. Within the secondary typeface, you can also use up to 2 different styles to maintain consistency. So as a conclusion, understanding the basics of typography is essential for creating effective and engaging web designs. By carefully selecting typefaces, establishing a clear hierarchy, and ensuring readability and legibility, you can enhance the user experience and communicate your message more effectively. Typography is a powerful tool that, when used correctly, can significantly impact the overall success of your design project. In this lesson, you've learned about the basics of typography, readability and accessibility best practices, and also where to find the best typefaces. Now it's time to move to the next lesson. In this lesson, you will learn how to use Auto Layout and how to create and use components in Figma. Before you start designing the website for the Architecture Studio in the next lesson, it's crucial for you to understand these tools. Skipping this lesson can lead to developing bad design habits, making you less efficient. Mastering these tools will save you a lot of time when editing and updating websites, especially for large projects. This knowledge is essential to become a proficient and effective designer. So what is Auto Layout? Auto Layout is a feature in Figma that helps you create designs that are flexible and responsive. It adjusts the position and size of elements automatically based on the rules you set. This means you don't have to manually adjust everything when the design changes. It's like magic. With Auto Layout, you can create designs that look good on any screen size. Whether you are designing for a phone, tablet, or computer, Auto Layout makes sure that your elements stay in the right place. This is especially helpful when designing websites or apps that need to work on different devices. Another benefit of Auto Layout is that it keeps your spacing consistent. You can set the exact space between elements, and Figma will maintain that spacing for you. Auto Layout makes it easy to rearrange elements. If you need to move an item up or down in the list, you can simply drag it and the other elements will adjust automatically. This saves time and keeps your design clean. So overall, Auto Layout in Figma helps you work faster and more efficiently. It ensures that your designs are flexible, consistent, and easy to update, making it an essential tool for any designer. I will now make a quick step-by-step demonstration on how Auto Layout works. Step number 1, creating a frame. First, let's create a frame by clicking on the Frame tool from the toolbar on the top left, or by pressing the F key. Now I will click and drag to create a frame on the canvas, something like this. Step number 2, adding elements to the frame. Now let's add some elements to our frame. I will start by, adding a few rectangles that represent buttons. I will add a unique color shade to each so we can better identify them. I will also add a background color to the parent frame. Step number 3, applying auto layout. To apply auto layout, simply right-click inside the frame, then select Add Auto Layout. You can also press Shift plus A. As you can see, the frame resizes automatically after activating auto layout. But don't worry about that because I will explain it to you in a moment when we talk about resizing options. Step number 4, configuring auto layout properties. With auto layout applied, we can explore the auto layout panel to manage our layout options. These arrows allow us to place items vertically, one on top of each other, horizontally, side by side, or enable wrapping so that when the frame is resized, like I'm doing right now, the items inside wrap to the next line. The next option is the space between items, which is useful for setting uniform spacing between each item. Next, let's explore the alignment panel, which helps us align the items inside the frame. For example, to place all items at the top of the frame, click the top alignment option and all items will move to the top. You can also do the same for the other directions. If you want the space between items to be flexible based on the width of the frame, double-click on the input field and write auto. Or you can simply double-click here. Now all items will be evenly spaced based on the frame's width. This also works for vertical layouts, spacing items vertically based on the frame's height. Below that, we see the padding option. This one allows us to set padding on each side of the frame. We can also add padding on the top or bottom of our frame. You can click the small icon and drag left or right to increase or decrease the padding. You can also directly input a number or click on the lines in the frame and drag in the direction you want. This is useful when you don't know the exact padding you want to add. If you know the exact padding, you can input the number directly. Let's say we want to add a 200 pixel padding on each side. We can come here and then add 200. And now we have a 200 pixel padding on each side. We can do the same thing vertically with this option. And if we want to add, a uniform padding on top, bottom, left, and right, we can do it here by pressing Control and then clicking, and then we can add whatever padding we want, like let's say 300. And now we have a 300 pixel padding on each side. Step number 5, adding new elements. One of the great features of auto layout is how it handles new elements. Let's add another rectangle to our group. Simply draw a new rectangle inside the frame and it will automatically adjust to the spacing and padding you set. Step number 6, rearrange elements. Auto layout makes it easy to rearrange elements. If you want to change the order of the buttons, just click and drag a rectangle to its new position. The other elements will adjust automatically to maintain the spacing. You can also use the keyboard keys to move the position of the elements like I'm doing right now. Step number 7, resizing. Finally, let's see how auto layout responds to resizing. Auto layout provides 3 key resizing options for elements within a frame: fill container, fixed, and hug. When an element is set to fill container, it expands to fill the available space within the parent frame, making it useful for creating flexible layouts where elements need to stretch to accommodate different screen sizes. And we can set the resizing vertically or horizontally, and this is how it behaves. As you can see, the item inside of the frame stretches or shrinks as we resize the frame. The fixed option keeps the elements at a specific size regardless of the parent's frame size, which is ideal for elements that need to maintain consistent dimensions, like icons or logos. The hug option adjusts the element size to fit its content. For example, a button with text will resize to fit the length of the text, making it useful for dynamic content where the size of the element should adapt to the amount of content it contains. To set these resizing options, select an element within the Auto Layout frame. In the right sidebar, right here, you will see the resizing settings where you can choose between fill container, fixed, and hug. Feel free to practice by creating some frames and adding shapes inside of them. You will be using Auto Layout a lot, so get familiar with it. Now, I will talk about the similarities between Auto Layout and CSS Flexbox. Auto Layout in Figma is very similar to CSS Flexbox. Both allow you to create flexible and responsive layouts by defining rules for how elements should be arranged and spaced. Just like Flexbox, Auto Layout lets you set the direction, alignment, and spacing between elements, making it easier to design for different screen sizes. When working with developers, understanding these similarities can be incredibly beneficial as it allows for smoother communication and implementation of design concepts. Auto Layout's properties in Figma have similar counterparts in CSS Flexbox. For instance, fill container in Auto Layout is like flex grow in Flexbox. In both Figma Auto Layout and CSS Flexbox, setting a fixed width ensures that the element maintains a specific width regardless of its content or container size. And hug is similar to flex basis set to auto. This alignment ensures that designers and developers are on the same page, reducing the likelihood of discrepancies between design and development. When you start applying Auto Layout, you might wonder how to place an element freely in front of the Auto Layout frame. For instance, if you have a product card and want to add a small circle on top of the right corner that says new, how can you do that, right? Don't worry, I will show you how to do that in a moment. In CSS, this can be done using absolute positioning, and you can do something very similar in Figma. When you use this feature, an object is removed from the normal flow of Auto Layout, but stays inside the Auto Layout frame. This means that the object won't affect or be affected by close-by elements, even when they resize or move. Just like in CSS, absolute positioning in Figma lets you place an object exactly where you want it inside its parent frame. These objects act like they are in a regular frame, so you can set constraints to control how they behave when the parent frame resizes. However, keep in mind that other auto layout features like resizing and advanced layout options don't apply to these objects. To use absolute positioning, select an element inside an auto layout frame and click the absolute positioning icon in the properties panel right here. I know all this might be a little bit confusing, especially when you are a beginner, right? But as always, feel free to ask any questions you have by leaving a comment if you are watching this on YouTube or by posting your questions in our private community. Now it's time for you to learn about components. Components are reusable elements in Figma that help maintain consistency and efficiency across your designs. They can be anything, basically, from buttons, icons, and form fields to entire sections of a user interface. By creating a component, you define a main version that can be reused multiple times throughout your design project. When you use a component, any changes made to the main component automatically update all instances of that component. This is particularly useful for making global updates across your design, saving you a ton of time. All right, so let me give you an example. We have this product card and we will turn it into a component. So to do that, let's select the frame and then right click and then go here. And when it says create component, we click. We can also create the component through this shortcut. Now we see this purple outline that is telling us that this is a component now. So now that we have our main component, we'll create some instances. And to do that, we select the component and then we press Alt. We maintain Alt pressed and then we drag. And we have one instance and then we'll create another one right here. All right, so now we have one main component and two instances. So let's see what happens if we change the background color of the main component. Let's change the background color. You see, the background color changes on all the instances, right? Let's change the background color back to white. And now let's say that we want to change the color of the buttons, right? But then we want each button to be a different color. You might be thinking that's not possible, because if we change the color of this main component, it changes the color on all instances, right? However, we can edit and change the colors of each, of the elements that are inside of the instances without affecting the main component and without affecting the other instances. So let's change the color of these two instances so you can see what I'm talking about. Let's change these to orange. And then let's change these to green. And now you might be thinking, okay, so now the instances are detached from the main component. And that's not what happens, because the instances are still linked to the main component. The only thing, we made an exception and we changed the color of an element inside of an instance. But let's change the background color of this main component right now. Let's change it. And as you can see, they are still linked. But the buttons of these instances are detached from the main component. So if we change the background color of the button of the main component, you can see that it doesn't change the color of these two buttons. And that's because these buttons are detached from this component. This way you maintain the flexibility to customize specific instances while keeping the benefits of using components for consistency and efficiency across your design. Components can also have variants, which are different states or versions of the same component. For example, a button component can have variants for its default, hover, and active states. This allows you to manage different appearances and interactions within a single component framework. You'll learn about this in Module 11 when we dive into variants in Figma. So don't worry about variants right now. To create a component, select the elements you want to include, then right-click and choose Create Component. Once created, the component will appear in your Assets panel right here. Now you can reuse this component whenever you want. Here are some nice tricks you can use. If you ever need to reset an edited instance back to its original state, select the instance, right-click, and then choose Reset Instance. This will revert any changes made to that instance, restoring it to match the main component. Another helpful trick is to swap instances. And there are different ways to do that. And I will show you right now. So here we have a group of components. So this is a frame. And then we have two components, right? Two main components. And here we have two components in the canvas. Now I will create an instance of this component so I can show you how it works, right? So let's say that we want to change the version of this instance. We want the dark mode. To do it, we can just select this instance, then go here where it says swap instance, right? And then select the dark mode. And now we have this version. And this is very helpful because when you start, designing with a bigger team, and when they have the components in a separate page, you can manipulate the page that you are working on and then swap different instances, right? And I will show you how it works. Let's copy this, right? And then paste it here, for example. Now I am in a different page, right? So let's say that we want to swap this instance to the light version. We right-click and then do the same thing. And now we have this version, right? So it's very, very useful. Let's delete this and go back to the page 1. Now let's try to do the same thing with this, right? I will make a version of the, an instance of this component. And then when I try to do it, I don't see the option. Why is that? That's because these are not related, right? They are in the canvas and they are not in inside a frame, right? And you might think, okay, so I can group these together, right? And create a group. But it doesn't work when they are inside of a group, right? They have to be inside of a frame. Now, if I create an auto layout frame, I press and hold Shift A. Now this is a frame. And now, if I want to swap this instance, I can. All right. And now you might be thinking, wow, so that's not ideal because now I will always have to create a frame in order to swap instances. And not necessarily, because there is a way to do it. Let me show you. I will ungroup this, right? So they are back in the canvas. And I will show you again that it's not going to appear right here, the swap option. But then in the properties panel, we have this option and we can use this now to swap the instances, right? So they don't have to be inside of a frame. You can do it in a different way. But if you want to use the right click and then swap instance, right? They have to be related. So, and that means that they have to be inside of a frame, right? Now you might be thinking, why when I have this instance selected, I cannot see this other instance here, right? In this swap instance, panel, right? I cannot see it and I cannot search for it or anything because it doesn't exist right here. And that happens because, as I said before, this instance is related to these components, right? And this instance is related to the components that are inside of this frame. I will show you an example so you can see how this works. All right, so let me create a frame. Here's a frame. I will change the color so you can see it better. Now I will turn this frame into a component. And now this frame, this component, right, belongs to this, right? It is related to these two components. And therefore, it's also, in the same quote unquote family as this instance. So now if we select this instance and we go here, we can see this frame, all right? Because they are related. Let's try to swap this into that rectangle and it works, right? Let me change it back to this. And now if we try to do the same thing with this instance, it doesn't work, right? You cannot see this rectangle here because, as I said before, they are not related. And what happens if we drag this here so it's part of this frame, right? What happens is you can see it here now because this is related to everything that is inside of this frame. All right. And I know that all these might be a little bit confusing, right? But I'm trying to explain it as best as I can. And as always, if you have any questions, you can let me know in the comments and I will do my best to answer. Now, let's see what would happen if we create an instance of this component right here. So this is the instance, right? Let me move this a little bit so it doesn't overlap with this. All right, so, and I will change the color of this instance, right? So this is the instance of this component, okay? And you might be thinking, okay, so how I know that this is the instance? because maybe you create it and you just forget, right? You can see it here. You know, it has a different icon. This is the component and this is the instance, okay? And you can see how when I hover, you know, it's highlighted on the screen. All right. So what happens if I try to swap this into this instance? Okay, because the logic says that if this is related to everything that is inside, I could be able to switch this into this instance, right? So no, you can't. And I will explain you why right now. As I said before, this is related to all the components that are inside of this frame, but not the instances of the components that are inside of this frame. If I create an instance of this component, and then I change the background color so you can see it better, and then let me move this instance here, and then I try to swap this instance, right? I cannot see this, right? I cannot see this instance here. I cannot see it here. I cannot see it here. I only see these three because this is an instance and this is an instance. So they are not related directly to this instance right here. All right. Let's now turn this into a component and we will see that it appears here. All right. And now we can swap this instance with this component. And now this is an instance of this component. And we can do the same with this rectangle. We can turn it into a component. And now we can swap this instance so it becomes an instance of this component. Now that you know how this works, create your own Figma file and then create your own components and instances and then try these different features to see how they work, you know, because if you want to really master these options, you have to practice. In this lesson, you've learned what auto layout is and how it works, and also what Figma components and instances are and how they work as well. Now let's move to the next lesson. In this lesson, we will talk about responsive design and breakpoints. Responsive design is crucial for creating websites that provide a seamless user experience across various devices. By understanding and applying the principles of responsive design, you can ensure that your websites are accessible, readable, and functional, whether viewed on a desktop, tablet, or smartphone. So let's do a brief introduction to breakpoints. What are breakpoints? Breakpoints are specific screen widths where the layout of a website changes to provide a better user experience. These changes ensure that a website is usable and looks good on all devices, from small mobile screens to large desktop monitors. For example, on a desktop, you might see a multi-column layout, while on a mobile device, this might change to a single column layout for better readability. So here are the most common breakpoints in web design. The first one is mobile, and these widths cover most smartphones. For example, 375 pixels is the width of an iPhone X. And next we have the tablet, and these widths cover devices like the iPad, for example. And these are the widths that cover most standard desktops and large screens. And a lot of people like to design for the 1440 pixels width, but I like also to design for larger screens. So a 1920 is a very common one that I use because it's a fact that people are getting larger screens. So it makes sense to also think about designing websites that cover more space of the screen. So everything is not so centered, right, with too much space on the sides. Sometimes you design a website and it looks better when it covers a larger area of the screen. So 1920 is one that I use very often. So I like to design one for larger screens, so 1920, one for regular screens, that is 1440 pixels, and then I like to design for tablet and then for mobile. Now let's talk about the main principles of responsive design. I will also talk about some strategies. Number one, fluid and flexible layouts. Fluid and flexible layouts use percentage-based width, ensuring that elements adjust to the screen size. Unlike fixed layouts that use specific pixel widths, fluid layouts allow content to resize proportionally to the user's screen. And here is an example. This frame is 50% relative to the width of the screen. So if we resize the screen, we can see that the frame adapts and remains 50%. Number two, responsive typography. Responsive typography ensures text readability on all devices. Instead of fixed font sizes, relative units like M or rem are used, which scale proportionally with the screen size. This means that headings, body text, and other typographical elements will adjust to different screen sizes, improving readability and user experience. And here is an example. As I resize the screen, we can see that the size of the font changes and adapts to the screen size. Number three, media queries. Media queries are CSS rules that apply styles based on device characteristics like width. They enable you to create different layouts for different screen sizes. For instance, you can use a media query to apply one set of styles for screens wider than 768 pixels and another for smaller screens, ensuring that your website looks good on all devices. And media queries are something that you would use a lot in CSS, but us as designers, when we design a website that will be built using Webflow or Framer, for example, or any other no-code platform, we don't have to write the media queries because the software has options to set the media queries. You can set the minimum width and maximum width within the app, and you don't have to actually write the code. But I wanted to mention it because this is something that maybe like a developer will mention, and you should know what he's talking about. That's why knowing these terms is important. Number four, responsive versus adaptive. Responsive design uses flexible layouts that adapt to the screen size by adjusting elements dynamically. Adaptive design, on the other hand, uses fixed layouts designed for specific screen sizes, switching between them based on the detected device. A combination of both approaches ensures optimal user experience across all devices, with responsive design providing fluidity and adaptive design offering tailored experiences. This is an example, and here we have a two-column grid, right? And then as we resize the screen, we can see that it turns into a one-column stack. And this is adaptive design. And the container of this grid is set to fix. So that's why it doesn't move, right? We have a fixed width. So even though it's adaptive and it changes, it's not flexible in terms of fluidity, right? And I will show you how it behaves right now when we turn it into relative instead of fixed. Now you can see that it's both adaptive and responsive. And here is an example so you can see how beautiful this navigation menu looks when we resize the screen. The flow is absolutely amazing. It adapts to the screen size, and as you can see here, the menu changes. So it's a combination of responsive design and adaptive design. Number five, the flow. On small screens, vertical content flow is crucial as it allows users to scroll down smoothly, ensuring that all content is accessible without horizontal scrolling. This linear flow makes reading and navigation easier, particularly on mobile devices where screen width is limited. And this doesn't mean that you should never use horizontal scrolling on mobile devices, right? You can, especially, for example, when you are designing for an e-commerce site, right? You can use horizontal scrolling in the product page so they can see more photos of the product. But the flow has to be consistent, and you have to make sure that it's not a sudden change, right? For example, if you are on the homepage of a website, when you are scrolling down, the user expects to continue scrolling down. But if all of a sudden there is like in the middle of it a horizontal scrolling pattern, it just interrupts the user behavior. And that's the same thing for desktop. Sometimes you go to a website and you see that there is a slideshow, and you scroll down and you read the text, and all of a sudden it doesn't scroll anymore. Why? Because all the information is scrolling horizontally now, and then goes back to vertical scrolling, and that's just very confusing. Number 6, maximum and minimum values. Setting maximum and minimum with values ensures that the content does not become too stretched on large screens or too cramped on small screens. These constraints maintain readability and visual appeal, ensuring that the elements stay within an optimal width range for any device. Number 7, nested objects. Using containers to nest objects provides better control over the layout and design of web pages. This practice allows designers to group related elements together, making it easier to manage and style them consistently. Nested objects ensure a more organized and maintainable web structure. Number 8, mobile or desktop first. Designing mobile first means starting with the smallest screen size and scaling up, ensuring that the essential content and functionality are accessible on mobile devices. Desktop first involves designing for larger screens and then adapting to smaller screens later on. So which one is better? And the answer is that it depends, right? For me personally, I prefer to start designing the desktop version, and then I design the tablet version, and then I move to the mobile version, right? But a lot of designers prefer to start with mobile first, and that's totally acceptable. It just depends on your style and what you are more comfortable with. But at the end of the day, as long as you know the basics of web design and you know how to design beautiful and functional website, it doesn't matter which approach you choose. And finally, number 9, bitmap images versus vectors. Bitmap images are pixel-based and can lose quality when resized, and these are suitable for detailed photographs, for example. Vectors, on the other hand, are composed of mathematical paths and scale perfectly without losing quality. These are ideal for logos and illustrations. Using vectors for scalable graphics and bitmaps for detailed photos ensures optimal visual quality across all devices. And this is important because seeing a website with, pixelated icons, and we see these a lot, very often. And also for, illustrations, when you go to a website and you see a very pixelated illustration, is aesthetically very painful. So that's it. By applying these principles and strategies, you will be able to create responsive designs that provide an excellent user experience regardless of the device being used. In this lesson, you've learned about breakpoints, which are the most common breakpoints, and also the main principles and strategies of responsive design. In this lesson, we talk about grid systems. Grid systems are important because they help us maintain consistency throughout the entire design. By using a grid system, we can ensure that elements are aligned properly, which enhances the visual structure and balance of our designs. All right, so let's start with the 8-point grid system. An 8-point grid system is a design framework where spacing, margins, and dimensions are based on multiples of 8 pixels. This helps maintain consistency and alignment across the user interface, making it visually harmonious and easier to scale designs across different screen sizes. For example, padding and margins will be set to 8 pixels, 16 pixels, 24 pixels, and so on. And what is a 4-point grid system? So this grid system is basically the same thing as the 8-point. The difference is that this is based on multiples of 4. That means that distances and dimensions increase in steps of 4 pixels, such as 4 pixels, 8 pixels, 12 pixels, 16 pixels, and so on. So here is an example. In this design, we are using the 8-point grid system for some elements, and then for some other elements, we are using the 4-point grid system, all right? And I will show you right now. So between this container and this container, we have 80 pixels, okay? A distance of 80 pixels. And then between this container and this container, we have a distance of 120 pixels. And this is also a multiple of 8. And if we look at the menu items, we can see that there is a distance of 32 pixels as well. So this is a multiple of 8. Now if we scroll down and we go here, we can see that the distance between each icon is 64 pixels. This is a multiple of 8 as well. So we can see the consistency. Here, 80 pixels as well, all right? At the bottom, 80 pixels as well. And here we can start to see the 4-point grid system, right? This is 24 pixels, which is a multiple of 4. And then here we can see as well how this is 12 pixels, multiple of 4, all right? So as you can see, there is, there is consistency. That's why when we zoom out, we can see how everything is perfectly spaced. The spacing is not the same for every element, right? But we are using a consistent system. That's why when we look at the big picture, when we look at everything zooming out, we can see that everything is very well balanced, all right? And in a moment, I will show you when to use the 8-point grid system and when to use the 4-point grid system. So here's when to use them. When we are trying to set a very tight spacing, like in this case, we use a 4-point grid system. As you can see here, I use 4 pixels, right? And then here as well, between these items, I use a 4-point grid system because I want these to be close to each other, right? Same thing here, between this and this, we see that it's 12 pixels. This is a 4-point grid system as well, all right? And then here, we are using a 8-point grid system, and that's because we are separating into containers. So we want the spacing to be, larger, right? So we are using a 8-point grid system. The 4-point grid system and the 8-point grid system overlap because any size that fits into the 8-point grid system also fits into the 4-point grid system. This is due to the, to 8 being a multiple of 4. For example, 80 pixels is a multiple of both 4 and 8, so it works in both systems. However, numbers like 4 and 12 are multiples of 4, but not 8, fitting only the 4-point grid system. This allows for more precise spacing adjustments. The 4-point grid offers finer control, while the 8-point grid provides larger, more consistent spacing, making the design simpler and easier to maintain. So in a nutshell, we use the 8-point grid system for simplicity and scalability, while the 4-point grid system is useful when detailed precision is needed. If you are wondering which grid system I prefer, I like to use a mix of both. Sometimes I prefer tighter spacing between some elements, which the 4-point grid system provides. However, I mainly use the 8-point grid throughout the entire design, with some exceptions where I use the 4-point grid system. When working with a team that already has a preferred system, like a 4-point grid, for example, I adjust and work within that system. At the end of the day, there is no right or wrong way when it comes to grid systems. It depends on the context of the design we are working on. Here we have icons with sizes of 80 pixels, 64 pixels, 48 pixels, and 32 pixels. These sizes work well with both the 4-point grid system and the 8-point grid system. The icon sizes here are multiples of both 4 and 8. This makes the icons easy to use in designs because they fit perfectly into both grid systems, ensuring the design looks clean and consistent. So always size the icons, keeping in mind the grid system you are working with. When working with typography in web design, using a 4-point grid system can help create a visually cohesive and consistent layout. To apply this system to text, you can choose any font size you want, but you need to make sure that the line height is a multiple of 4. For example, if you decide on a paragraph font size of 20 pixels, the line height could be 24 pixels, 28 pixels, 32 pixels, and so on. However, it's important to avoid making the line height too large because an overly spaced line height can make the text look disconnected and harder to read. To find the right line height, you could use percentages. A good range is between 120% and 150% of the font size. This means that if your font size is 20 pixels, you could calculate 140% of 20 pixels, which gives you a line height of 28 pixels. If the line height you calculate using percentages isn't a multiple of 4, you could adjust it. For instance, if you calculate a line height of 27 pixels, which isn't a multiple of 4, you can round it up to 28 pixels to fit the 4-point grid system. This way, your text remains visually consistent and aligned with other design elements. So, what's the difference between using a fixed line height and a percentage? Using a fixed multiple of 4 for line height in a 4-point grid system ensures that all elements in your design align perfectly, creating a clean and organized look. This consistency makes it easier to align text with other design elements like images and buttons, and keeps your layout predictable and scalable across different devices. On the other hand, using percentages for line height makes sure that the spacing is always proportional to the font size, which can enhance readability. For instance, a line height that's 140% of the font size scales naturally as the font size changes. If instead of using a percentage, we use a fixed number as line height, this is what happens when we increase the size of the font. As you can see, the line height remains the same. While using fixed multiples of 4 is generally better for maintaining a strict grid alignment, slight adjustments for readability are often fine and won't significantly impact the overall design harmony. So in conclusion, the 4-point grid system in typography involves setting line heights and spacing to be multiples of 4. By using percentages to find a suitable line height and adjusting the nearest multiple of 4, you can maintain both readability and visual harmony in your designs. And if you want to use the 8-point grid system instead, it's exactly the same approach, but using multiples of 8. In this lesson, you've learned what grid systems are and when to use them. We've also explored the most popular grid systems, such as the 4-point grid system and the 8-point grid system. Alright, it's about time. Now that you have a basic understanding of the main principles of web design, we can start designing a website for an architecture studio. This project will allow us to apply those principles in a practical setting, focusing on creating a visually appealing and functional site that showcases the studio's portfolio, attracts potential clients, and communicates the brand's unique identity. So let's dive into the initial steps and set the foundation for a successful web design project. So the first thing we will do is to create 3 pages. One for the wireframes and components, one for the main design, and one for the bin. In the wireframes and components page is where we will place our wireframes and components. In the main design page is where we will design our website. And then in the bin page is where we will place any elements that we are not using anymore. And to create the pages, you just have to come here and then click to add new pages. Since we are using the free plan, we only can create 3 pages, so we have to work with what we have. Here we have the copy that we are going to use for the home page, and then here we have the brief. And you can download these documents by going to freewebdesigncourse.com/course-files. And you will find all the files that you will need to design the entire site. And if you prefer to have these inside of Figma, I also added a link to to the Figma file. All right, so let's start. The first thing we will do is to copy and paste here the wireframe of the homepage. And to do so, go to the Figma file that contains the wireframes. And if you don't have access yet, go to freewebdesigncourse.com/course-files, and then you will find a link to the Figma file that contains the wireframes. And once you are in the Figma file, you can hide the comments by pressing Shift+C on your keyboard. Once you have access to this file, go here to the homepage desktop section, and then copy this wireframe, which is the homepage wireframe. All right, so copy it, and then go to the main design page, and then paste it here, right here. Now you can make a copy of this frame. Select the frame and then press Alt on your keyboard and then drag right here, and then select everything that is inside of this frame and delete it. Now the next thing we will do is to change the name of this frame to desktop-homepage. We can write here wireframe. So in the layers panel, we'll be able to separate this frame to this frame. The next thing we will do is to create the grid. And for this design, we are going to use the 8-point grid system. And to do so, we have to select this frame and then go to Layout Grid and then click here. And now you will see that there is a grid that appears, but this is not what we want. So we go back to Layout Grid, and then we select the columns grid, and then we write 12 because we want a 12 column grid, and this is how it looks. Now that we have the 12 column grid activated, we will tweak these options. And I like to change the color of the grid. You can change it to any color you want. And then we will also set the margin. Since we are using an 8-point grid system, we will set the margin to 40 pixels. And then the gutter to 32 pixels. And this is how it looks now. All right, we can see the margin and then we can see the gutter. And now we will create the grid style. And to do so, we select this frame and then we go here. And then we click these 4 dots, right? And then we click the plus sign, create style. And then 1 second. Here we click show more options. And then we can see that the 12 column grid is selected. So the name, we can name it desktop grid, since this is the grid we are going to use for the desktop version. And then we click create style. And now we have the style created and we can reuse it throughout our design. Here is a nice shortcut to turn on and off the grid. You can do so by pressing Shift G. All right. Sometimes we need to see the grid so we can see where are we placing the elements. And sometimes we want to turn it off, so to better visualize the design, right? And as I said, Shift G, and you can turn it on and off. The next thing we will do is to create the header. And to do so, we will select this frame, and then inside of it, we will press F, and then we will begin creating the frame, which is going to be the header. And then what I like to do is to add a stroke, so I can better visualize where the frame is, because if not, as you can see, if I don't select it, I don't know where it is located, right? And then if I select it right now and then I add a stroke, I can better visualize where is it. So this stroke, we'll remove it later on, but for now we'll keep it like this. And to make sure that we stay organized, we have to name everything, right? So this frame is going to be named header. So we have to go here in the layers panel, and then we double click and then we name it header. And now that we have our header created, we will start adding the elements inside of it. And the first thing we will add is the logo. Since we don't have a logo, we will just write architecture, and that's going to be our logo for this website. So let's select the frame and then press T on your keyboard and then write architecture. Now we can resize the font, something like 24 pixels maybe. And then we place it right here. For now, we will keep the logo here. Obviously, we will move it later on, so it's better aligned. But for now, we can keep it here. And the next thing we will do is to go to the brief real quick, so we can see which menu items we have to create. So they want a section where they can display images of their past projects. So that's the work page. And then the services page, and then the about us page, and then a contact page. All right, so we know which menu items we have to create. We will now make a copy of this text. So we press Alt and then we drag. And then this will be the menu item. So we change the name to menu items for now. And then we make a copy. This is going to be for work, then services, then about us, and then contact. And now that we have the menu items, we will be changing the name of each one by one. So we select this one, and this is going to be work. And then this one is going to be services. And then this one is going to be about us. And then this one is going to be contact. And now that we have the menu items, we will group them into a frame so we can better align them. So we press Control and Shift and press this one, and then this one, and then this one, and this one. And then we press Shift A to create the auto layout frame. All right, so now it's an auto layout frame. And as you can see, we can move them since they are grouped now. Now we will move these to the right. I will zoom out so you can see. To do so, we will select this. So this is already selected. And then we go to the Properties panel right here. And then we click this option, Align Right. And then we can see how this now is, aligned to the right. And now we will do the same thing for the logo, but instead of clicking Align Right, we will click Align Left, this option. And now, as you can see, the logo is aligned to the left. Now let's hide the grid for a moment, and to do so, remember, we press Shift G. And we will name this frame, all right? And this is going to be called Navigation Menu. So we go here, and then we call it Navigation Menu. And then we select the logos frame, and then we change the name to logo. Now we will set the spacing for the menu items. So let's zoom a little bit so you can see it. Now it's set at 87 pixels. So this does not respect the 8-point grid system, right? So we will change this to something like 32 pixels and see how it looks. Now it's set to 32 pixels and the spacing looks nice for now. So we will keep it at 32 pixels. Now we will frame every single menu item. So we select it and then right click and then frame selection. And then we do the same thing for this one. And then the same thing for this one, and the same thing for this one. Now you might be wondering why we place each of these menu items inside of a frame. And we do that because this way we will have more control over the individual parameters of the menu items in case we want to edit them in the future. So I always prefer to frame them individually. Now we will give a name to all the individual frames. And to do so, we go to the Layers panel, and then we press Shift, and then select this one, and then maintain Shift, and select the last one. And now we have all of them selected. And now that we have all of them selected, we right-click, and then we click here where it says Rename, and then we will see this screen appear, this window, right? And then we will give them this name, Menu Item. And then we will write the $, and then 2 N's. So as you can see, it gives us a number in order, right? The number 1, 2, 3, and 4. And this is a very nice way to organize them. So after we set this, we click Rename. And that's it. Perfectly named. Now we will start adding the other elements of this page. And don't worry too much about the margin right here because we will fix it obviously. by setting auto layout on this frame. All right, we'll do that later. So let's go back to the wireframe and see what we have to add now. The next thing is the hero text. So let's go to the homepage copy and then let's take it from here. We copy this and then we paste it into this frame right here. Now let's toggle on the grid, Shift plus G on your keyboard. Now let's frame this text, and to do so you can select the text and then right click and then go here where it says frame selection and click, or you can use a shortcut which is press Control on your keyboard, then Alt, then G. And now we can see that it's framed. And now that we have this frame created, what do we have to do next? Yes, sir, you guessed it. We have to add a name. And there is a shortcut to do that, right? If you are on a Windows, you can create, you can rename the frame by pressing Control on your keyboard and then pressing R, right? And then you will see that you can directly rename the frame. And if you are on a Mac, obviously, you have to press Command and then R. And for this frame, we will name it Hero Text. And I know that you might be thinking, wow, like naming all the layers, this is like very time consuming, but you will get used to it. And I want to make sure that you develop good design habits, because at the end of the day, this is going to help you stay organized, especially when you are working with a team or you are working on a big project. When you have enough experience, if you are designing something for yourself or you are doing like a quick project or like a quick landing page or whatever, you don't have to name everything, right? But it's better for you to get used to it, because as I said, if you want to systemize your designs for a big project, you have to make sure that everything is named. Now let's convert this frame into an auto layout frame. So while we have this frame selected, we press Shift A on our keyboard. And now this frame is an auto layout frame. And you can know that this is an auto layout frame by looking at this icon right here. Now we will change the font size because we want this to be bigger, all right? And to do so, we will select the text that is inside of the frame. And I will show you a trick. When we have elements inside of a frame, or we have nested frames inside of a parent frame, to select them, we can, instead of double clicking like this, we can just press Control on our keyboard and directly select the item inside of the frame, which is faster, especially when we have a lot of layers. Let me give you an example. If we want to reach this text that's inside of this nested frame, we would have to, click multiple times like I'm doing right now. And this is the most intuitive way to do it. But there is a better way to do it, and it's by moving the cursor until we reach the element we want to select. In this case, this text. And then while we have the cursor here, we can press and maintain Control or Command on our keyboard, and then we click the element. And now, as you can see, we selected the element, and in this way is way more efficient than just like clicking multiple times, especially when we have a lot of nested frames. Now you might be thinking, what if I want to select this blue frame? It's the same thing. We press and maintain Control or Command on our keyboard, and then we click. And as you can see, we selected this frame. And if we want to select another frame, we do the same thing. We press and maintain Control, and then we click, as I did with this orange one. Now, to select frames this way, you have to make sure that they have a background color, because if they don't have a background color, you cannot select the frames, nested frames, by pressing Control or Command and then clicking. Let me show you. If we select this blue frame and then we remove the background color, as we can see, if we try to select it this way by pressing and maintaining Control or Command and then clicking, it doesn't work, right? We have to click multiple times to reach this frame because it doesn't have a background color. When I discovered this, I tried an experiment. So I selected the frame, and then I went to, to add a background color. And then I added the background color, and then I set the opacity to 0, right? I tried to be slick, but then it doesn't work. For it to work, you have to set the opacity to at least 0.1%. And now, as we can see, it works. All right. Here are the different ways to select a frame. Now let's get back to designing the website. Let's increase the font size of this hero text. So let's select the text, and then here on the properties panel, we change the font size to 40 pixels. And let's see how it looks. Let's add a space here. Now let's click outside once, and then click again. So we select the parent frame, and then we will resize the frame. Something like this. And then we select the text by pressing Ctrl and clicking, and then we will set it to fill container. All right. Now let's set the line height of this text to 120%, which is going to be exactly the same, but in case we decide to resize it later on, it's going to be consistent, right? It's going to be 120% relative to the font size. Now we will add the next element, which is going to be this title that says work. Let's do it by clicking inside of the frame, and then pressing T on our keyboard, and then clicking, and then writing work. And now we will resize it. Probably something like 200 pixels for now. And then let's place it right here. Let's center it a little right here. Let's frame it by selecting it and then pressing Ctrl Alt and G. And now let's change the name. So let's change it to title. We can remove this stroke already. So we select it, and then here in the properties panel where it says stroke, we click right here. Now let's add the next section, which is going to be this section right here. This is going to be our featured project. So let's create a frame here. Now we can name this frame image container. Now let's add an image inside of this frame. To do so, let's select the frame and then add a rectangle inside. So let's press R on our keyboard, and then let's draw a rectangle, something like this. Let's toggle off the grid so we can see it better. Now let's select the frame, and then we should convert this frame into an auto layout frame. So while we have it selected, let's press Shift A. Now let's select the rectangle that's inside, and then let's go to the properties panel and then set this to fill container. Now let's go back to the frame and select the frame, and then let's remove any padding that we have here. So let's set it to 0. Now, as we can see, the rectangle fits perfectly the frame. Now let's add our desired image. So to do that, we have to select the rectangle and then go here in the properties panel, and then click here where it says fill, and then select the image option. And then we click here where it says choose image. Now we will see this window pop up, and then we choose our image. In this case, is this one. We double click, and then here we have our image perfectly placed. Now let's activate the grid to make sure that this is centered. So we will resize this frame, and to do so we have the frame selected, and then we go here to one of the corners, and then while we press and maintain Shift, we resize it. Let's zoom to make sure that this is perfectly aligned with the grid. If not, we can just resize it a little bit more and then go to the other corner. Okay, this is perfect. We can toggle off the grid for now. Now let's resize the frame. So instead of the size, we can set it to 800. So it's more even. That was for the height. The width is perfect already. Now let's say that we want to move the image a little bit to the right or to the left. We can do it by selecting the image and then going here in the properties panel where it says image and then clicking here. And now we see that it's set to fill. We can change it to crop. Now using the keyboard, we can move it to the right or to the left. We can also use the mouse, but with the keyboard, it's more precise. Now let's change the name of the image. To do so, let's press Ctrl and then click to select the image. And then now we press Ctrl again and R, and then we change the name. Let's write something like featured project image. Now we will add the project name and location here. So let's toggle on the grid again. Now we will add here a placeholder for the project name and location. So let's press T on our keyboard and then let's write something like this. Project name and then location. This is a M dash, but you can use a comma if you want. Now let's resize this text to 24 pixels. Now let's select this and then this, right? So this text and this frame, and we will create an auto layout frame. So let's press Shift A. And now while we have this frame selected, let's change the name. So let's press Ctrl or Command plus R on our keyboard. And then let's rename it to something like featured project card. Now let's change the spacing here. So we click here and then we can set it to 40 pixels. Remember, a multiple of 8. And it looks good now. Let's toggle off the grid so we can see how the site is looking. All right. And now let's modify this text because I don't really like it how it looks so centered. I prefer it if it's full width, you know, and it's aligned with this image and this navigation menu, this header. So let's do it. Let's reactivate the grid and then let's resize this so it's aligned with the header and all the content that's below. Let's toggle off the grid so we can better see it. And now it looks so much better. Now the spacing looks a little bit off. Very off, I would say. But we will fix it because we will activate auto layout to this frame. And then we will set the spacing so it's aligned with the 8-point grid system and everything will look very well balanced. Now let's create these project cards and then we will do the same we did to create this one. So let's reactivate the grid. And then we click here inside of this frame and then we will create another frame here. Now let's press F on our keyboard and then let's create a frame, something like this for now. Now while we have this frame selected, let's add a stroke. Now let's click inside of the frame and then press the R key and let's draw a rectangle. Like this. Let's deactivate the grid. And now we will do the same thing we did here. So we select the frame, then press Shift-A to convert it to an auto layout frame. Now, while we have the frame selected, we go to the properties panel and then remove any padding we have here. So we set this to 0 and then this to 0. Now let's rename the frame to image container. Now let's select the image and then let's go here to the properties panel and we will do the same thing we did before. We click and then we select image and then we choose our image, which in this case it's going to be this one, project 2. So we double click and we have our image here. Now let's select the frame and then let's make sure that it's aligned with the grid. So let me zoom and then let's move it here. Now let's resize the image. So let's select the image. So remember, Control or Command and click once. Then go to the properties panel and then make sure that this is activated, to make sure that the aspect ratio still is the same. And here we add a height of 800 pixels. And then let's go back to the image. Now let's select the image. So remember, Control or Command plus click, and then you will select the image that it's inside of the frame. And then let's resize it. We can do that manually. So let me zoom. And let's resize it so it's aligned with the grid. Right here. Let me zoom out. Now let's add here the project name and location. So let's press T on our keyboard and then write name and location. And then let's resize these to 24 pixels. And then while we have this selected, we press and maintain Shift, then click this frame, and then we activate Auto Layout, Shift-A. Now let's change the spacing here to 40 pixels. Remember that you can also change the spacing by going to the properties panel right here. I just prefer to, sometimes change it directly in the here, right here. And now let's change the name of this frame and then the image. So this time we can just go here and then change the name to project card. And then we will change the name of the image to project image. Now let's toggle off the grid to see how it's looking. Nice. Now we'll reactivate the grid and then we will make a copy of this. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we have to make 5 copies. And then on each copy, we will change the image. So what we will do is to create a component. So we will transform this to a component and then we will make 6 copies. And we will move this to a different page. So we will move it here. Our page for the wireframes and components. And then here we will have all the instances. So let's move this frame and then turn it into a component. Let's select the frame and then press Ctrl or Command X on our keyboard to cut it. And then let's go to this page. And then we can paste it somewhere. Here is fine for now. Now let's select the frame and then let's turn it into a component. Let's right click. And then here where it says create component, we click. And now, as we can see, this frame is a component. Now let's go back to the main design page. And then here, where it says assets, it's where we will see all our components, right? So this is the component that we need. We click, and then here where it says insert instance, click again, and now we have the instance here. So what we have to do is to move it inside of the frame, right? And then let's reactivate the grid, and then let's place it where it's supposed to be, right here. And now we will make 5 copies of this instance. So we select the instance, and then we press and maintain Alt on our keyboard, and then we make a copy. We place it here for now, and then we make another copy, and then another one, and then another one, and then another one. And now we can change the images on each of these instances without affecting the parent component, right? So let's do that. Let's select the image that's inside of this instance. So Control and then click, and then go here in the Properties panel. And then we do the same process we did before. Here in this folder, we have all the images we need. In this case, it's project 3, right here. And let's do the same with all these other instances. Now we have all the images we need. Let's toggle off the grid so we can better see the website. And now this is starting to look like a real website. The beauty of using components and instances is that, for example, let's go to this page, and then let's add a background color, and then change the text color as well. Let's see, maybe a black background, and then let's change the text to white. If we go back to the main design page, we can see that it changes on all the instances. So imagine that we have like hundreds of instances, right, in a project, and then the client says, hey, I want to change the background color to a different color, right? If we have to do it manually on every page, it's very, very time consuming. But if we have components and then instances, it's very effective and efficient. Let's go back to the components page, and then let's remove the background color, and then let's change the text to black again. And then let's remove the stroke that we added when we created this frame. So let's select this frame, and then let's remove the stroke. And now the stroke is going to be removed from all the instances of this component. As we can see, there is no stroke anywhere. What I like to do is to modify the parent component as well, so I can better identify it. So let's select the image, Control or Command click, and then let's go here, and then select solid. Now let's go back to the main design page. As we can see here, when we change the image to a solid color on the main component, it also changed on this particular instance. And that's because since the main component already had the image we needed on this instance, we kept it and didn't override it like we did on the other instances. To fix this, we can select the image, go to the Properties panel right here, click on Image, and choose our desired image. In this case, it's going to be this one. Now, if we go to this page, we can see how everything is set correctly now. Now it's time to add the next section or element, and it's going to be the CTA. And the CTA, it's going to be a link. It could be a button, but I prefer to add a link for this CTA particularly. And it's going to be a link that will take us to the projects page. Basically a page where we will feature every single project that this studio has done. To add the CTA, let's create a text, and then let's write more projects. Now let's resize these to 80 pixels because I want it to be large, right? Then let's set the line height to 120%. Now let's select it and then move it to the center, right here. Now let's add this arrow. And you can find this icon inside of the icons folder. And here's the URL. So you can access this folder and then import the arrow. Let's drag the arrow here. And then now we will resize it. So while we have the icon selected, let's go to the properties panel. And then let's activate this to maintain the aspect ratio. And then let's resize it to 96 pixels. Now let's move it here. Now we'll select the arrow and then we will press and maintain shift and select the text as well. Now we'll add these two elements to an auto layout frame by pressing shift plus A. Now let's move it to the center. Now let's change the spacing here to 48 pixels, a multiple of 8. Now let's zoom out and see how it looks. It looks good. Now let's rename this auto layout frame. We can name it CTA Link. Like this, it's fine. The next section we have to create is the footer. So let's extend a little bit this frame so we have more space. And then let's add a frame here. Let's activate the grid so we can better see it. And then let's add a stroke to this frame. Let's rename the footer. Now let's add the elements inside of the footer. So it's going to be very minimal. I like to keep a copyright notice here on the left side, and then the legal note and privacy policy here. Let's do it. Now let's resize it to 20 pixels. And let's place it here for now. Now let's make a copy. And then we write legal note. Then we make another copy and we write privacy policy. Let's zoom this a little bit. All right, so now let's make another copy, and this is going to be contact. Now let's select this and this, and then let's move it to the right. And then let's create an auto layout frame while we have these two selected. Now let's frame this, and then let's frame this as well. So this is an auto layout frame, and then this one and this one are just regular frames. And I will explain why I did this right now. I converted this into an auto layout frame because these are related and they are going to be positioned here on the right side. And then this is going to be positioned in the center of the frame. And then this one is going to be positioned here on the left side. Now let's resize this frame so it's aligned with the grid, like this. Now while we have this frame selected, let's convert it into an auto layout frame, Shift plus A. And now let's resize it, and then let's move it. Now let's go to the properties panel while we have this frame selected. And then let's remove the padding on the sides. Let's set it to 0. And then this padding, we will set it to 40 pixels, a multiple of 8. And then here, we will select Align Center, and then we will double click. So the spacing between items is set to auto. Now let's go back to the grid. Let's select this frame, and then let's set the spacing. And we will use the same spacing we use here. So 32 pixels. Let's go back to the bottom, and then let's select this frame, and then let's change it to 32 pixels. 32. Now, as we can see, everything is perfectly aligned. Now let's rename these frames. This one is going to be the copyright. So we write copyright here. And then this one is going to be contact. And then this one is going to be boring pages. I like to call them boring pages because they are very boring, only text. So you can name them like whatever you want. Now let's toggle off the grid, and then let's select this frame, and then let's remove this stroke. And now our page is almost completed. I just noticed an oversight, and it's that all these components are not inside of this frame. All right, as we can see, let's select them. As we can see here, they are not inside of this frame, but it's fine. We can just select all of them and then drag them inside of the frame. That's it. Things like this can happen all the time because we are human, right? That's why it's very important to always double check everything and make sure that every little oversight or mistake is corrected. Now we'll create different sections with auto layout before activating the auto layout on this main frame. And we will do that because we want to make sure that we can set different spacing between sections. With auto layout, we can't add individual spacing between the items inside. To achieve this, we have to create nested frames, and that's exactly what we are doing. Let me show you what I mean. Let's activate auto layout on this frame. As we can see, the spacing between all the sections is the same, right? So we cannot set individual spacing between all these elements and sections. Let me go back. Now let's organize these. So let's select all these instances, and then let's create an auto layout frame. So now this is an auto layout frame, and then we will change the name to nested projects container. Now we will select this frame and then press and maintain shift and select this frame and then create an auto layout frame. Now let's rename this frame, and we can call it also nested projects container. Now let's select this frame and then press and maintain shift and select this frame. And then let's create an auto layout frame. Now let's change the name of this frame to parent projects container. Now let's set the spacing for each of these sections. And this, and also here. Always respecting the 8-point grid system. Here we will add a padding of 72, multiple of 8 as well. And then here, 64. And then here as well, 64. Now we have a very nice spacing, so just a recap. Here is 72, then 64, then 64, all right? Now let's set the space between these cards, all right, to auto. So let's go to the properties panel and then double click here. Now let's select this frame and then press shift and then select this frame, and let's create an auto layout frame. Now let's rename this frame to projects section, like this. And now let's resize this space to 160 pixels, multiple of 8. Now this section is perfectly spaced. Now let's set the spacing between these frames and then these frames. To do so, let's select this frame and then this frame, and let's convert them into an auto layout frame. Now let's set the spacing, this, to 144 pixels. And now let's select this frame that we just created and then this one and convert them into an auto layout frame. And now let's set the spacing to 144 pixels as well. Now let's go to the footer, then select this frame and convert them into an auto layout frame. And then we will set this to 200 pixels. Now let's rename the auto layout frames we created. So this one, we can name it container, and then the other one, we will name it container as well. Now let's select our main frame and let's convert it into an auto layout frame as well. And now let's set the padding on all sides to 40 pixels. To do so, we go to the properties panel, and then we, right here, we press Control or Command, and then we click, and then we write 40 pixels. And now we have a 40 pixels padding on all sides. Now we have the homepage completed, but we have to tweak some stuff to make the UX better and also to make it look better. And one of the things I like to work on is the navigation menu. There are a lot of different types of navigation menus. For example, a popular one is a fixed navigation bar that stays visible at the top of the screen while you scroll down the page. This design is commonly used for a website's main navigation menu, ensuring that it's always visible. However, in my opinion, it takes too much screen space, especially on small devices. So I prefer to hide the menu when users scroll down and show it again when they scroll up. This keeps the screen clean and uncluttered while still providing easy access to the navigation menu. You can see this approach in action on the course's website, freewebdesigncourse.com. As you can see here, the navigation disappears when I scroll down and it appears when I scroll up. This wows the user because they think they have to scroll all the way up to get back to the navigation menu, but they don't. So it's awesome. Now let's go back to the design file. Okay, so I'm adding a background color to the navigation menu to ensure that when it appears as the user scrolls up, all the menu items are clearly visible. This prevents overlap with the content behind it, avoiding a messy design and making the menu easier to read. I believe this is an elegant solution for maintaining a clear and functional design. Let's do it. Let's select this frame and then go to the properties panel. And then we can add a placeholder color, like something like this for now. And then right now I will go to the mood board and then I will pick a blue shade from here, because remember that in the brief we have here, one second, you see here it says you could also add some shades of blue or other cold colors. So we will, since we have in the mood board some nice shades of blue, we will leverage that. So let's create a rectangle right here, something like this. And then while we select the rectangle, we go to the properties panel, and then here we select the color picker, and then we see here in the mood board if we can find a nice shade of blue, something like this is fine. Now we have this shade of blue, but then this is too dark, so we will make it a little bit lighter. So we go back to the properties panel, and then we slide this to make it very light. Let me see. Let's try this shade of blue and see. Let's move this right here next to the home page. Now let's select this frame, right? And then let's go to the properties panel and click here. And then let's select the color picker. And then while we have this selected, we click here inside of the rectangle. And now we have the color applied here. Now let's apply some styling. Let's go to the properties panel. And then here on the auto layout panel, we'll add a padding of, on the sides of 30 pixels and see how it looks. Okay, now let's go back to the properties panel and then top and bottom of 20 pixels. Let's see how it looks. All right, now let's apply auto layout to this frame. All right, to the header, Shift A. And then let's go back to the properties panel and then let's align these to the center. Now that I'm looking, probably let's select the navigation menu and let's change the height, because I believe that giving it a padding of 30 pixels as well would make it look nicer. So let's go to the properties panel and then let's do 30 pixels here as well. All right. Now let's change the border radius, because like this it looks sharp. For some designs it works, but I prefer to add some corner radius when I do this type of navigation menus. So let's select the frame and then go to the properties panel right here. And then here where it says corner radius, we can give it a 10 as border radius. And let's see, it looks nice. As you probably noticed, the design of this navigation menu is exactly the same I used to design the free webdesigncourse.com's website. And that's because it works very well. All right, so before completing the page, I was looking at the navigation menu and I think that adding a different spacing would be better. So now it's set to 32 pixels. Let's change it to 48, which is also a multiple of 8. Let's see. Yeah, now it looks better. Now we can remove this rectangle. And then let's set some color styles, because this color blue, for example, we can add it as a style. So let's go here in the properties panel. Let's click here. And then this plus sign, click here. And then let's select style. And now we can add a name, probably light blue. And then click here where it says create style. And now, as you can see here, when the color is applied, we can see the color name. Now let's do the same thing with the color black. So let's select this frame. And then let's go to the properties panel here. And we can see that we have two shades of black. We have this, which is a very dark gray, and then this, which is pure black. And we want to make sure that everything, like all the text, is set to this very dark black. So we are not using the, the pure black. And to do that, we simply click here, and then we write 10, 10, 10. And now all the text in this page is using this color. And now we'll create a style, the same thing we did with the light blue. So we click here, and then we click here, and then style, and then we can call this black, and then create. As you can see, now we have the light blue and the black, and then we can do the same thing with the white as well. And then style, white, and then create the style. And now these are the three colors we are using for this design. Now the desktop version of our homepage is done. The next step is to create the next breakpoint. And the next breakpoint is the tablet version. So we will create the tablet version, and then we'll create the mobile version. So let's start. Let's press F on our keyboard, and then let's draw a frame, something like this. We'll set the width right now. So while we have the frame selected, we go to the properties panel, and then on the width, we change it to 810. And this is going to be the breakpoint for tablet. Now let's rename this frame to tablet homepage. And then now we can stretch it like this for now. Now let's create the grid for the tablet. So let's select the frame and then go to layout grid here, and then click, and then we click here, and then we set it to columns. And then this one is going to be an 8-column grid. Then I will change the color to blue, and then the margin, we can still use a 40 pixel margin, and then the gutter 32 pixels. Now we'll copy some elements from here and we will add them here. And the first thing we will copy and paste is the header. So we select the header, and then we press Ctrl or Command C, and then we select this frame, and then Ctrl or Command V. And now, as we can see, we have the header here. Now let's resize it so it fits the grid. And let's deactivate the grid for now. And as we can see, the menu is just like a little bit too close to the logo, so we have to fix this. And what I often do to fix this is basically to change the navigation menu. And instead of having the entire menu displayed, I prefer to add a quote-unquote hamburger menu. And I say quote-unquote because it's not your typical hamburger menu. And I will show you exactly what I do. So I will select these menu items and I will delete all of them. And then here I will write menu. Now let's select the text of the inside of this frame. So this is the menu item frame. So we select the actual text, and then we go to the properties panel right here, and then we center the text. Now we have it perfectly centered. Now let's reactivate the grid, and then let's zoom out. All right. Now we will add some more elements, and then remember that the padding at the top and then the bottom is going to be applied later. Let's select this frame that contains the hero text, and then we copy it, select the tablet frame, and then paste it. And then let's move it here, around here. And then let's activate the grid. and then let's resize it. Let me zoom in so we can better see it. Now let's deactivate the grid for a moment. Let's change the text size. So let's select the text and then go to the properties panel. And then let's set it to 36 pixels. Now that the text is set to 36 pixels, I see a design problem, and it's this is called the rag, and it's basically this curve that we are seeing here. This is like, so just think as in like imaginary curve right here. This is not good. It doesn't look good, right? So we might change the text to maybe, let me see, 32 pixels. And now this looks way better. Now that we are copying everything to the tablet version, we can see that all the layers are named. So that's the beauty of this, right? That we don't have to name everything again. Okay, let's continue copying this. Now we will select this frame, and then we'll copy it here. We move it here. Here for now is fine. And then we'll change the size as well. Let's select the text, and then here we can change it to 160. And then let's center it. We didn't have the auto layout activated on this frame, but let's do it now. So while we have the frame selected, let's press Shift A, and then let's do it on this frame as well. Now let's go to this frame and let's remove the padding. So whatever padding you have here, set it to 0. And now let's center it. Now let's select and copy this frame. And then we select this frame and then paste it here. Now you will see and appreciate the beauty of auto layout. So let's go to this frame, and then we select this frame, which is this one, the image container. And then we go to the properties panel, and then here, instead of fixed, we select fill container and we click. And then now we click outside, and then we select this frame, which is the feature project card. And then we resize it here in this corner. And then we press and maintain Shift, and then let's resize. And as you can see, it resizes perfectly. Now let's reactivate the grid. And then let's see. We select the frame, we press and maintain Shift, and then we align it with the grid. And then here is already aligned, so perfect. Now let's resize this text to 18 pixels. No, actually 20. Let's set it to 20. Now let's change the font size of this menu item, because this, the project name and the location is 24 pixels, 20 pixels. So this has to be also 20 pixels, because here we are, we set these menu items to 24 pixels. And then the project name and location here is 24 pixels as well. So we want to keep the consistency. And before we change the size of this text, we will activate auto layout on this frame. And I will show you why right now. If we don't have auto layout activated on this frame, when we select the text and we change the size, as we can see, it's not aligned to the center. And then we'll have to go here and then, align it and, all that stuff, right? Let me go back. So the best approach is to activate auto layout on this frame, right? Which is this frame, okay? And then change the size, select the text and then change the size to 20 pixels. And as we can see, the text is perfectly aligned. Now, before I forget, I will also add auto layout on each of these frames. All right, each of these. So this one, this one, this one, and this one. It's important to activate auto layout on elements early in the design, because imagine if we had like tens or hundreds of pages, right? If we didn't have auto layout activated and we didn't set, create components, we would have to go to every page one by one and then set the auto layout elements or do whatever changes we want to do. And that would be very time consuming. So make sure that you activate auto layout before you finish designing the first pages, ideally the first page. Now we'll add these project cards to the tablet breakpoint. And to do that, we have to just go to any of these instances. This one, for example, and then we copy it. We select the tablet homepage frame, and then we paste it here. As we can see, this is already an instance attached to a component. So we have to detach it. And to do that, we can just right click. And then here where it says detach instance, we click here. And now, as we can see, it's already detached because we are seeing this blue outline. Now let's toggle on the grid. And then we have to resize this card, right? If we try to do it, it's not going to work. Let me show you, right? Because this image inside is set to fixed. As we can see, if we select it here in the properties panel, it's set to fixed. So we have to change it to fill container, and this fill container as well. And now we have to also select this frame, the image container, and then change the property to fill container as well. And now if we try to resize this frame, it's going to work. Then we'll copy this and then paste it to the components page, and then create a component and then create instances. But that's very time consuming, right? And we are all about efficiency. So I will show you a better way to do it. Let's delete this one. Now let's go to the components page. And then here, where we have our component, we will select the image, which is this frame. This layer, right? We will go to the properties panel, and then we'll set it to fill container and then fill container. And now we will select this frame, the image container, and then we will do the same thing. We will go here in the properties panel, and we can see this one is set to fixed. We will change it to fill container. And now if we go to the main design page, and then we copy this instance, let's copy it, and then we paste it here. And then we try to resize it, we can see how it resizes perfectly. Now let's make sure that the size of the frame aligns with the grid. Let's resize it by pressing and maintaining Shift and then resize it like this. Now it's time to copy and paste the other instances. So we select this instance, and then we go to the tablet, and then we paste it here. And it's basically the same process. We resize it by maintaining Shift. And now this is perfectly aligned with the grid. Before we continue, I will add a project name and a location to all these instances. I will just make it up so it looks more realistic. All right, so I have added the project names and the locations here as well. You can use the same ones I used, or you can just, choose any project names and locations you want. Now copy the rest of the instances, right? These 4 here, and do exactly what I did here. And make sure that the font size is set to 20 pixels. Now we have all the project cards here. Let's toggle off the grid so we can better see everything. And as we can see, there are some misalignments here. For example, you see this image, and that's because this text has 2 lines. And there are different ways to fix it. And we will fix it by adding, instead of writing here Norway, for example, we will do the same thing we did here, right? And then we will write Nor in this case. And then here, like this. And then Australia, this, and then here the same thing. Okay, so here we can like this. And now everything is perfectly aligned. Now let's add the next element, which is this CTA. So let's copy the entire frame and then select this frame and then paste it. Let's move it up a little bit. And then now it's time to resize it. Let's resize it to 60 pixels and see. Maybe 50 pixels. Let's see. 60 pixels I think is better. Yes, let's keep it at 60 pixels. And now we have to resize this, and we can resize it to 80 pixels, but we have to make sure that this is activated, to keep the same aspect ratio. So now we can set it at 80 pixels. And now it looks good. Now let's add the footer, this section. And before adding it, we'll create a component, and we'll create a component for the header as well. And we'll do that because the footer and the navigation menu will be repeated multiple times throughout the website. So let's select the header, and then let's copy it and go to the components page. And then let's paste it somewhere here. Let's move it up a little, right here. And now let's create the component. So we select the frame, and then we right click, and then here where it says create component, we click. And now we have our component. And we'll do the same thing with the footer. So we go to the main design page, and then we select, copy and paste the footer. Let's go back to the components page, and then let's paste it here. Let's move it up, and then let's convert it into a component. Now we'll do the same thing with the tablet and mobile header. So let's go to the main design page again, and then we go to the tablet version. Then we copy this, then go to the components page, and then we paste it here. Let's move it down a little. And now let's convert this into a component. The next step is to copy each one of these to the main design page. So let's start with the header for the desktop version. And then we copy it, we go to the main design page. And then here we double click right here. So we are inside of the frame, and then we paste it. Now it's going to be pasted here at the bottom, but what we can do is to basically just drag it, right? We drag it here. You can also use the keyboard to change the position of the header. Now we select this one, and then we remove it. And now we have the instance of the component right here. In Figma, when you copy and paste a component, the pasted element will be an instance of the original component instead of a direct copy. This approach makes sense because having multiple copies of the exact same component is redundant, right? If you want to copy a component and then edit it to create a different version, you can detach the instance of that component and then convert it into a new component. I hope this makes sense to you. Now let's go to the components page, and then let's do the same thing with the other components. So I will copy the footer, and then I will go to the main design page, and then I will scroll down and then click here and then paste it. And now I will move it up and then remove this one. Now let's go back to the components page. Let's copy this one. Let's go back to the main design page. And then while we select the tablet version, we paste it here. And then we move it up. We remove this one. And then that's it. Now let's go to the footer here. And then we select it. We copy it. And then we paste it here in the tablet version. And now we activate the grid, and then we resize it like this. Let's resize this side as well, and then let's move it up. Let's toggle off the grid. Now looking at the desktop version and the tablet version, there is one thing that doesn't convince me too much. And it's basically the spacing between these cards. The proportion doesn't seem right if you look at this one and then this one. So let's change the spacing on the tablet version. So let's select the tablet version. Let's toggle on the grid. And then let's go here in the properties panel. And then let's change the gutter to 24 pixels. Now let's resize each of these cards so they fit the grid perfectly. And there are different ways to do this, and a very efficient way to do it is with variants. And you will learn how to use variants later in the course, but for now we'll just resize them manually, like one by one. So let's resize this one first and make sure that it aligns perfectly with the grid. Remember to maintain shift. Now this one is perfectly aligned. To make sure that the sizing of all these instances is accurate, we have to go to the properties panel while we have this one selected that we already resized. And then we have to see these values, and we have to apply these values to all these other instances. So one by one. The values are 353 width, and then the height is 462. To save time, we will select all these instances by maintaining shift, and then we'll go to the properties panel, and we see that it says mixed. We'll change this, the width to 353, and then the height to 462. And now it's going to change the sizing on all of them. And don't worry about aligning them right now, because we will do so with Auto Layout in a few moments. The next thing we will do before we forget is to save this grid into a style. So let's select this frame, then go to the properties panel. And then here, these 4 dots, we click, and then we click this plus sign. And now we'll have the option to, here when we click show options, to select this grid and then create this style. So the name is going to be tablet grid, and then we click create style. And now if we click here on the canvas, we can see that we have the desktop grid and the tablet grid. Now let's toggle off the grid, And then let's start applying auto layout. Let's select all these frames and then apply auto layout. Let's toggle on the grid, and then now let's rename this frame, and we will go and look what name we gave to this frame, which is nested projects container. We will copy this, and then we will name this frame exactly that. Next, we will change the spacing. So instead of 44 pixels, as we can see here, we will change it to 40 pixels. Now, while we have the frame selected, we will go to the properties panel again, and then we will align it to the center, and then double click to set the gap between items to auto. And now we will resize the frame so it aligns with the grid. Now, as you can see, everything is perfectly aligned. Now here, since we are going to use the same spacing here and then here, we can just, cut by pressing Ctrl or Command and X, and then select this frame and then paste it here. And now we have it here at the bottom. So with the arrow on the keyboard, we can move it up. Now let's toggle off the grid for a second, and then let's see which other auto layout frame we have to create. So let's go to this frame, and then let's see. All right, we have to create an auto layout frame connecting this frame with this frame. And then we have to give it a space in here. All right, so let's select this frame, and then this frame, and then let's create an auto layout frame. Now let's set the spacing here to 48 pixels. Let's see how it looks. Maybe let's try 56. Yeah, it looks better. Now let's see which name we gave to this frame. Projects section. So let's copy it, and then let's select this one and then paste it here. All right, let's see which other frame we have to create. So I think it's this one. Yes, this one that connects all this content with the CTA. So let's do that. Let's select this and then this frame, and then let's activate auto layout. Now we'll set the spacing here to 128 pixels. Let's see how it looks. Yeah, it looks good. There is something that doesn't convince me here in the footer menus, and it's probably because since the contact menu item is centered here inside of this frame, but it's not really centered when we look at the entire, page, right? It doesn't, it's not centered because we have two menu items here. So I will just move these to the right side. So we have three menu items here, and then the copyright text here. So let's do that before we advance to the next stage of the design. Since this is a component, we have to go to the components page and then find the component, which is this, the footer menu, and then we select it. And I will take this frame, and then I will cut it, Control or Command and X, and then I will select this frame, right? And then I will paste it. And now I will move it with the keyboard arrows to the left side. Now when I go to the main design page, I can see the change. It also changed here because we are using the same component. And this is the beauty of using components, that we are very time efficient. Now let's see which is the next auto layout frame you have to create. So let me click here. And as we can see, is this one, right? The connection or grouping, if you will, of this frame and this frame. And now that I have this frame connected, I can see that I forgot to add the name. And that's okay, because we can rename it right now. Sometimes this will happen, right? You will be working on a file and then you will forget to name some stuff, but that's fine as long as you name everything before, doing a developer handoff or before sharing the file with other designers and stakeholders. You have to make sure that all the frames are named. With the advancements of AI technology, we'll probably be able to create very solid and strong naming conventions automatically. But at the moment, you have to get used to naming everything manually. I'm aware that there are some plugins that help you name the layers automatically, but I wanted to show you and let you know that you have to, develop the habit of naming everything, because the naming conventions will change depending on the project you are working on. All right, so let's rename this frame, and we can call it content container. Now let's create this auto layout frame here in the tablet breakpoint. So we select this and then this, right? These two. And then we press and maintain Shift A and we create the auto layout frame. Now let's set the spacing here to 96 pixels. It looks good. Now let's create the next auto layout frame, which is going to be, let me see. All right, so this frame and this frame. So we select this, and then we create an auto layout frame. And now we set the spacing here to 96 pixels as well. And we set the same spacing here and here, because here in the desktop version, as we can see, we have the same spacing here and here. So when designing the different breakpoints, we always take into consideration and as a reference the spacing, and layout of the desktop version. Now, as we saw before in this course, when we talked about the adaptive design and responsive design, we know that the layout, even though this is going to be the reference, right? The layout is going to change, especially on mobile. It's going to be different because it doesn't make sense to replicate the exact same layout on all the different breakpoints, right? So we will see that when we design the mobile version, the layout is going to be different. And that design method, it's called 1, 2, and 3. Yeah, adaptive design. Now let's rename the layers that we just created. So we go here and we see this one is already named, if I'm not mistaken. No, it's not named. So this is called content container. So we copy the name and then we select it here in the tablet breakpoint, and then we paste it here. And then we do the same thing with the others. So this one, it's called project section. We paste it here. And then the last one, it's called container. So let's just change the name to container, and that's it. Now let's group this frame and then this frame with an auto layout frame. So let's select both and then Shift A. And this frame is going to be called container as well. And now let's set the spacing here, which is going to be 160 pixels. And then finally, let's convert this main frame into an auto layout frame. And now let's set the padding on the entire frame to 40 pixels. We can already delete the wireframe. And then let's select these two frames, these two main frames. And then let's go to the auto layout panel here. And then let's align everything to center. I aligned everything to the center because let's say that we want to see how this page would look on a wider screen. So we can create a copy like I did right now, and then we stretch the frame, and as we can see, everything is centered. And then now here we could, tweak the layout. If we want like more columns here, or we want the content to cover more space, we could do it. All right, so let's delete this. And then now it's time to create the tablet expanded menu. To do so, we'll make a copy of this frame. And then we'll delete everything minus the menu. So you can just start deleting all the layers, even the footer, and then we'll deactivate auto layout now, right here. Then we'll stretch this. Now we will change the background color to this blue. So while we have the frame selected, we go to the properties panel, and then we go to libraries, and then we select this color, the light blue. This way we integrate more of this shade of blue into the design. Now let's change the background color of this frame, because if not, we cannot see it. The background of the main frame is the same color. So let's go to the properties panel, and then let's change it to white for now and see how it looks. It looks good. Now we can remove the logo because we don't need it here. Now let's add the menu items here. So we have work, services, about us, and contact. So work, then we make a copy, services, another copy, then about us, another copy, and then contact. And we have to add the blog as well. So let's add it now. Let's make another copy here. And this is going to be the blog. And then I will reorder it in a minute. So here we don't have the blog. So we have to go to the main component. And we can do so by going to the components page, or we can just select the instance here and then right click and go to main component. And now this is going to take us to the component directly. And this is a good way to save a little bit of time. Now that we are in the main component, we are going to make a copy of the services. And then we will write blog. And now we have the blog menu item in the header component. Now let's go back to the main design page. And then let's go to the expanded tablet menu. Let's rename this main frame to expanded tablet menu. Now let's change the font size of the menu items because I want them to be large. So let's select all of them. Then go to the properties panel, and then let's add 72 and see how it looks. Looks good. So now we have to select them and then activate auto layout. Now we have auto layout activated, but it's set to wrap. That's why this looks a little bit messy. So let's go to the auto layout panel and then let's select vertical layout. Now let's move this here and then let's select all the menu items, and then let's set the line height to 120%. Now let's select the auto layout frame and then let's change the spacing between menu items to 34 pixels. Remember, always respecting the 8-point grid system, right? So a multiple of 8. Now let's frame each of these menu items with auto layout. So we select this one and then activate auto layout, and then here auto layout as well, and then this one auto layout, and auto layout. Now let's rename the frames. So these we can call it menu items container. Now we select all the menu items and then we right click, and now we navigate to rename, and now we'll see this pop up, and then here we'll name it menu item, and then we'll add this $, and then 2 ends, so we have them perfectly numbered. Now we click rename, and that's it. Now let's change this, because here it should say close. This way we can close the expanded menu by clicking this button. I just noticed that the logo we had here is not removed. The frame that contained the logo is not removed, and that's because when I removed the logo, I selected the text instead of the frame. So let's select the header, and then here in the layers panel, we can see how the text is hidden, but the frame is not. So we can just select the this frame where it says logo and then delete it. And as you can see, it's not completely deleted. That's because this is an instance, right? So we are not really deleting this this logo, because if we deleted this, right, if this was completely deleted, it would be deleted in the main instance, and that's not what we want. Now let's navigate back to the menu. So here we can see that the this menu item, if you will, this close button is now moved to the left, and that's because we just removed the logo from this instance. So let's align it to the right. Let's go to the layers panel, and then we select this, and then we go to the auto layout panel. We deactivate the automatic gap between items by double clicking here. And now we can see that the close button is set to the center, right? So we go back to the auto layout panel, and then we align it to the right. Now let's go back to the layers panel. And then here we can see how these, these menu items are not placed inside of this auto layout frame, and it should be here, right? So let's select this frame, and then we drag it inside of this container. And now we'll see how it's placed right here. And now by pressing the down arrow key on our keyboard, we move it down. Now let's select this frame, then go to the auto layout panel, and then align it to the top left. And now we have the menu correctly placed. Now let's resize this spacing to 80 pixels. Now let's select this frame and then activate auto layout. Now in this case, we will go to the properties panel, and then we will set the the height to fixed. And then we will go here and then we will stretch the frame to cover the entire vertical viewport. Now let's reorder the menu items so they follow the same order as here. Done. And that's it. We just created the expanded tablet menu. Now the next step is to create the mobile breakpoint. So let's create a frame, something like this. Then we'll resize it now. While we have it selected, we go to the properties panel and then the width should be 375 pixels. Now we will rename this main frame to mobile homepage. Now let's go to the wireframes and components page. Then let's look for the mobile version, this one. And then let's copy and paste this to this page. Right here. And now this is going to be like an exercise for you. So you will, complete the mobile version. You have the wireframe here, and then you have everything you need here. So just complete it, and then we'll be done with this first page. Go to freewebdesigncourse.com/course files, and you will find there all the Figma files and everything you need to complete this exercise. If you need help with any of the exercises or tasks in this course, feel free to join our private community at webdesignerscollective.com. I'm very active there, and you will find also other designers willing to help. It's totally free to join. All right, so here is the completed design of the homepage. And as I was completing this, like the mobile version, I just noticed that here in this icon, I didn't activate auto layout. So let's activate it right now. It was like a little bit off, and then I noticed. So, just select it and then activate auto layout. And do the same thing here in the mobile version and also in the desktop version. This happened because when I imported this icon into the desktop version, I didn't activate auto layout because at that moment I didn't need auto layout, right? And this happens all the time. So the best thing to do is to always double or triple check everything. All right, so here is the entire design. And then I want you to complete the final exercise. And the final exercise is basically designing all these pages, right? All these pages I want you to replicate. And you will have access to this Figma file. Go to the, freewebdesigncourse.com/course files, and you will find this Figma file, so you can take this as reference. This design is simple, functional, and looks good. If I had an architecture studio right now, I'd like my website to look like this. You can see my style reflected in this design. However, as designers, it's important not to get too attached to a particular style. Bruce Lee once said something like this in an interview. I do not believe in styles. You should express yourself totally and completely. That way you won't create a style, because style is crystallization. Even though I have a preferred style for my own projects, I can adapt to any style proposed to me because I have learned the art of adaptation and growth. This is crucial for you as a web designer as well, because you have to embrace flexibility and continuous improvement in your work, and always be open to new ideas and styles. All right, cool. So as you can see here, we are using some different shades of blue, and all this is intentional. All right. I use this light blue here because when there is a lot of text in a page, I prefer to use a very light color instead of pure white. It makes the text easier to read. In this Figma file, you will have all the color styles, grid styles, and font styles. Use them to complete the design. And as always, if you have any questions, just let me know, and make sure that you join us, in the group, in the private group, because there you will find other fellow designers. You will be able to ask questions, participate, and don't be the typical person that is, member of a community and never participates, never ask questions. It's very important for you to do that if you want to grow. So I will see you there. Now I will explain what a style guide is and why it's important to have one. You will learn how a style guide helps ensure consistency, efficiency, and a strong brand identity in web design. By the end of this lesson, you will understand the key elements of a style guide and the benefits it brings to your projects. So, what is a style guide? A style guide is a detailed document that explains the design standards and the guidelines for a website or application. It serves as a reference tool for designers, developers, and content creators, making sure that everything looks and works consistently. A style guide usually includes information about the brand's identity, such as how to use the logo, the color palette, typography, and icons. It also outlines design principles like layout, grids, spacing, and alignment rules. Additionally, it includes guidelines for user interface components such as buttons, forms, and navigation bars, as well as content guidelines for tone of voice, grammar, and formatting standards. Lastly, it provides instructions on how to use media like images and videos. So why it's important to have a style guide? Having a style guide is crucial for several reasons. First, it ensures consistency across all elements of the website or application, making everything look and feel more cohesive. This consistency builds trust with users and enhances their experience. Second, a style guide helps teams work more efficiently. With clear guidelines, designers and developers don't have to make decisions on the fly, reducing the time spent on revisions and speeding up the project completion. Third, a style guide helps maintain a strong and recognizable brand identity. By following the predefined standards, every piece of content reinforces the brand's image and message. Fourth, it promotes better collaboration among team members. It acts as a common reference point, making it easier for new team members to understand and follow the established design practices. Fifth, a style guide helps maintain high-quality output. By adhering to the guidelines, the final product is more likely to be polished and professional. Sixth, it ensures scalability. As the website or application grows, a style guide helps new features and pages align with the existing design, which is crucial for long-term maintenance and expansion. And finally, a consistent design makes it easier for users to navigate and interact with the website. A familiar look and feel enhances usability and overall satisfaction. You can find the style guide for this website here in this page. Feel free to replicate it. You can also add some stuff that is missing, like the textiles, for example. These textiles, right? You can add them here. You can also add some other stuff that you think it's missing. You can do some research, because the style guide can be way more comprehensive than this, but I just wanted to show you how it looks. In conclusion, a style guide is an essential tool for any web design project. It promotes consistency, efficiency, and strong brand identity while enhancing user experience. By investing time in creating a detailed style guide, teams can ensure their projects are cohesive, scalable, and also high quality. In this lesson, you've learned how to design a website using Figma, and also what a style guide is and when to create one. Here are a couple of things to keep in mind. Every designer has a unique way of designing. I show you how I do it, but it doesn't mean that you have to do it exactly like me. Feel free to experiment and build your own process, but always keep in mind the main design fundamentals. Study and understand the rules before trying to break them. Your designs and processes will most likely never be 100% perfect, but you should always strive for excellence. Mistakes are normal and part of building something exciting. Just make sure to be diligent when working on projects for real clients by double or even triple checking everything. It's very easy to overlook things when there are so many moving pieces. Congratulations on finishing Module 3. Now you know how to design websites, and that's awesome. This is an incredible milestone, and I'm very proud of you. Make sure to share what you've learned in the community and try to help others as you become an expert. It's our responsibility as designers to teach and help others. So thanks for taking action, and I will see you in Module 4.